Would like to welcome everybody to the June 12th meeting of the New Bern Board of Aldermen. At this time, the prayer tonight will be given by Alderman Odom.
Thank you, Mayor. You go bow your heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you for yet another opportunity to gather together to conduct the business of the city. We ask that you be with us as we make decisions for the greater good of New Bern. And ask these things in your name, I pray. Amen.
Amen. Would you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Flag will rise. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Alderman Bingle. Here. Alderwoman Harris.
Present.
Alderman Astor.
Here.
Mayor Outlaw.
Here.
Alderman Kinsey.
Here.
Alderman Best.
Present.
Alderman Odom.
Here.
Okay, Mr. Stevens, at this time, would you like to make a special introduction?
Sure. Wanted to introduce to you our newest, well, I wouldn't say our newest employee, but our newest department head, executive level position, Mr. Charlie Bouchard. He comes to us from Michigan. He is our new public utilities director, and happy to have him on board. That's Charlie. Charlie, you want to come up and say something, or introduce yourself a little further?
I'm excited to be in New Bern. Thanks for the invitation to get me down here, and I look forward to being a part of the staff and a contributing member.
Welcome.
Well, welcome to New Bern. And you come by way of Michigan?
Michigan.
Okay, great.
Originally from Erie, Pennsylvania, but professionally the last 15 years have been in Michigan.
Okay, great.
So happy to be here.
We're really looking forward to getting to know you better and working with you. And electric is such a big part of what we do in the city. So I'm sure you're going to hear from all of us in one way or another. So I need your cell phone number.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Welcome.
sir. At this time, we have one request of petitions of citizens, and that is Margot Vesperman, if she would like to come forward at this time. And please give your name and address for the record.
My name is Margot Vesperman, and I reside at 518 Metcalf Street and also live aboard at Bridgepoint Marina. I am addressing item number 9 on the consent agenda. Understanding that no answers are provided at this time, I pose the following questions, anticipating a future opportunity for a response or discussion. Why are boaters and marina residents not included in the list of those affected by the current bridge schedule? I bring assurance that we are. Number 2, the resolution proposes the schedule be altered, quote, to open only on the half hour of every hour. If I understand this correctly, the bridge is limited to one opening per hour, such as 1:30, 2:30, and 3:30. My question, is this correct? 3, if passed, what are your next steps? Moving on to NCDOT, the United States Coast Guard, public comment period, and ultimately changing the Code of Federal Regulations? 4, or is this a cosmetic acknowledgement that current operations are problematic for all parties? In conclusion, I urge you to revisit the resolution and at least include opening on the hour also, such as 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2 o'clock, etc. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Mayor, I was just going to say thank you very much for being here. And if you want to stick around during the discussion of the agenda item, we're happy to answer those questions or have you involved with more questions. I don't think we'll have a problem in allowing you to speak at that time if we do have more questions, so you're certainly free to stay and look at that. But we have some questions ourselves. We'll address it at that point, okay? But thank you for being here tonight.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to look at the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
No.
Okay, motion and a second.
Wait, Barbara.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Not
Yes.
really a question, but I would like for some revisions to be made to the May 22nd Board of Aldermen meeting, line item number 14, and that was in reference to the traffic
the Chapter 70 traffic and vehicles. I would like for the minutes to reflect a comment that, well, actually, a question that I asked about the flashing yellow lights and the comments that Mr. Matt Montaigne made about the board possibly adopting a resolution or sending a memo to DOT. And also the comments made by the mayor that he advised the city manager to get with myself and another alderman to get with a representative from DOT. If that could be added into the minutes, I would thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
No, Alderman Biscuit, is May 22nd? Is that
May
the one?
22nd.
May 22nd. I just want to make sure I'm looking at it because I had questions about that too, but I was going to do it after.
Can we go ahead, if nobody has a problem with these minutes, approve these, and let's before we move further, if it's okay with the board, let's discuss that and see what we want to do about refining those. Is that okay with you?
That's fine.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Now, if it's a pleasure of the board, let's discuss your concern and see where we're going to go with that.
I believe it was that she just wants more detail
Right.
in it,
More detail put into the minutes.
into the minutes. on
And
it.
did anybody have any concerns on the board with what Alderman Bess had to say that she wants included?
No.
Mayor, I don't have a problem. I think this has come up a couple of times before, and I think it's probably advantageous for us as a board to kind of give some sound direction to staff on what we expect in minutes. The previous board, we were advised that just a very brief synopsis of what took place and the action that took place is all that's required to be recorded, because now we have the visual and audio representation. If the direction has changed, we probably need to let staff know that.
I think you do let them know that. Yeah, I've mentioned this a couple of times. It's just my concern. Sometimes the written record is, I don't know what technology is going to do in 20 years. I'm not sure. But I always like a written record, and I know when I make comments, I would prefer them to be in there so that I have a clear understanding when I go back to the written word that it is what was said and done. I don't think we have to have a verbatim court reporter type set of minutes, but certainly if an alderman sees something and they want more meat to it, I think that's the option we should have. But I know, and I think the city clerk knows me well enough now that she is including more of my comments because I've made that a couple of times. So.
Mayor, my only suggestion would be that since we get these minutes and meetings prior to that, maybe we need to make a stipulation that if anything needs to be changed, it needs to be changed prior to, so that once we come to the meeting, we can go ahead and approve it, and it's already taken care of.
Okay. Madam Clerk, did you get the items, Alderman Bess? Would you recite those before us? Bring them back.
Yes, she wanted her comments about the flashing yellow lights, comments that Matt Montaigne made about the board possibly adopting a resolution or sending a memo to DOT, and your comments where you advised the city manager to get with her on
And another alderman.
on the issue.
Is that okay?
That is fine.
Mr. Davis, are you good? Can we incorporate this?
No, sir. She's going to have to redraft those minutes, put them back on the agenda for next meeting,
Okay.
and you can approve them as revised next
Okay.
meeting. We can do things on the fly, change a word or two, or
Right, yes.
draft a sentence back, but we can't editorialize and hope it turns out right.
Okay, if that's agreeable, the next meeting, we will approve those. Okay. At this time, let's go to the recognition of graduates of the Police Academy. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, members of the board. As you know, from time to time, we have a Citizens Police Academy, this being our latest academy, marking the 22nd session that has been held by our police and citizens of our community who are willing to participate. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Summers, and he will introduce the graduates of the Police Academy that are with us tonight and add any further detail.
Good evening, Mayor, Board. I won't go through a long, drawn-out explanation of what the Citizen Police Academy is about because I'm sure you're all aware of it at this point. However, I will call on our class president. This is the 22nd session, as the city manager mentioned. Class president for this session is Ms. Jones. She'll have a few words, and then Detective Jensen will introduce the rest of the class.
Good evening. My name is Chelsea Jones, and like the chief said, I'm the class president of the 22nd. Thank you. Citizens Police Academy, and tonight I'm just going to tell you a little bit about what that is and what we gain from it. During the 10-week period, we have gone over everything from the history of policing, what it takes to become a police officer, and going on a tour to the Craven County Jail. Also learning much about the technology advancement and how that has helped our criminal justice system here in New Bern. Some of those advances help citizens report crime with ease. Some of these things I have learned about is for a small incident, you don't have to call 911, you can just report it online. You can also text 911 instead of calling if that's not an option. And that more informed persons are more willing to report a crime and talk about what they have witnessed. So during this class, we have became more informed citizens, and we have gained a better relationship with the police department and some of the officers. And my favorite part of the class was when each chapter was introduced, a different police officer was leading it. So they also put their personal insight and also had like different stories to go along with what we were being taught. And that was probably my favorite part about it. And a good way to keep in touch with the local police department and what is going on through social media now, like Facebook and Twitter. And the department always keeps upcoming events posted, so if anybody is wanting to be involved in the next community outreach, they can find it there, right there at their hands. So I thought that was really interesting and important. And the Citizens Police Academy is a wonderful community outreach, and it builds relationships between citizens and police officers, and I'm honored to be a part of it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mayor and Board, if you'd like to come down. Again, we started with, I believe, 13 members of the Citizen Police Academy class. We graduated 10. Not that the others failed.
If I could have the members stand up from the top. Mr. Franny Brown? Yeah, so however you guys want to. Chelsea Jones? Kirsten Blumkine, who her husband was an officer with us. Julia Credle. Ms. Vicky Feldhouse, excuse me. And Mr. Lawrence Feldhouse. So, thank you.
I know that the Aldermen can say anything, but I mean, we can't do enough communication and getting to know our neighbors and our cost systems. We really appreciate what staff, the police department is doing, and we really appreciate what you're doing. And we get some friends that come on and do this again, because the more we do it, the more we get to know each other, the more we have a better understanding, and we can get to know each other better. And thank you, Libra.
Well, I would like to say what was unique about this class, this is the first time we integrated the community college with our class. We had 3 or 4 students.
We had 4 students. I was able to reach out to the community college and Dr. Hicks of the community college, and the college actually agreed to give a credit of an elective credit to any criminal justice students that wanted to participate in the 10-week program.
So the president was saying that she had a term paper to do, and she was able to do her term paper based on the class, so that was great.
Right. Thanks for what you're doing. Thank you. All right, we'll just, we're out here sometimes. Thanks. Mr. Stevens, we're going to go to item number 6 now, discussion of utility deposits.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. At the May 8th, 2018 meeting, the governing board established a working group consisting of Alderman Bingle, Alderwoman Harris, and Alderman Best to meet with the Director of Finance to discuss utility deposits. As a result of the working group's discussions, the following changes have been recommended to the full board for residential customers only, effective July 1. Per fiscal year, deposits will not be assessed on the first payment arrangement. Payment arrangements may be billed as installments. There will be no late penalties or fees that will be assessed if the payment plan is adhered to as agreed upon by the customer. The second thing, per fiscal year, deposits will not be assessed for the first check returned for insufficient funds. The third item will be that new customers may pay deposits in installments with 50% due at the time service is established and the balance payable over 4 billing cycles. Payment arrangements are not permitted until the deposit is paid. The fourth item is new residential deposits shall not exceed $500. Currently, right now, it is twice the highest two bills for the year. And these changes, the fifth and final thing will be these changes are not retroactive, meaning that we can't go back on existing deposits. So there's a memo that's included in your packet from Mr. Sabatelli, and we're here to answer any kind of questions the board may have.
Does the board have questions, comments, statements? Yes, sir.
The new system that we have that's in place now, how will that work to help to lead? Would that be a component that would help to reduce any utilities?
If a customer chooses to join our prepay system, if that's the program that you're referring to, a deposit is not required at that time because you're prepaying much like you do into a card that is like a prepaid debit card. And it essentially establishes a little, a bank of funds on a card. If you sign up for that program, then obviously we have said all along that utility deposits would not be required. Now, if you're referring to the AMI program, yes, AMI would still require, that's more of an internal thing about how our meters communicate back to our billing. But yes, you still would be required to have utilities based on the AMI if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, I was trying to see. I like what the committee has done, and I was just trying to figure out also how the new system is going to work with that, and will that be something that would be able to do the same thing? I didn't know.
Sure. But yes, essentially, your normal customer signing up for service, if a deposit is required, those with good credit don't require a deposit anyways, but if you can establish based on our guidelines and our rules that we have in place. But if one is required, basically, currently now it is 2 times whatever the highest bill or that exists. The new deposits will not exceed $500. So there is a little bit of financial risk that is associated with that because there's a gap on some of the accounts based on what 2 times the highest bill is. But that's the recommendation of the board, and we're here to present it to you tonight.
Okay.
But the prepay system has always been, if you sign up and do that, then there would be no deposit required because you're paying up front for your utilities.
So
Alderman Best, do you have
Yes, I did. Alderman Bingle and Harris, during our, I guess this would be the appropriate time to say this since we're talking about the deposits, and it came to my attention when I was reading this, that during our meeting with JR, we didn't discuss about the refund of deposits for a customer. And I have a concern about if you have a customer that has a deposit and they pay their bill on time, they're not delinquent, but for some reason within that 18 months they have to make a payment arrangement. So with that payment arrangement, that one-time payment arrangement, that forfeits their deposit back, correct?
Yes, basically, yes, it makes, we would continue to hold their deposit for longer. It would reset the 18 months.
I have a problem with that. I mean, because the reason why I have a problem with that is because the city allows an individual for payment arrangements within that year. So if they have to exercise one of them, then when those 18 months are out, they forfeit their deposit.
Well, no, they're not forfeiting their deposit. Their deposit still stays on their account. It's still their deposit. It just takes longer for them to get it back and for it to apply back to their bill.
So you're going to keep it an additional 18 more months?
That would be the intent, yes, ma'am. Yeah, once the deposit is already in hand, yes. The committee, we were only addressing like the new assessment of the deposits. We
right.
didn't discuss.
That's why I said we didn't discuss that, and that came to my attention when I was reading this. I think within an 18-month period, if an individual have just one payment arrangement, and then at the end of that, and they pay it on time, they don't have any late fees or any penalties or anything like that, and then they're not going to receive a refund for that deposit. That's a long period of time. 18 months to hold a deposit, and then because they have to utilize one payment arrangement. So I just had a problem with that, and we didn't just go into that. We just discussed that.
I did make a comment. My comment was that because of the liability that we're taking by reducing it to a flat rate of $500 for the deposit, and what the system is now, that there should not be a refund process for the deposit unless they're leaving the City of New Bern Utilities, period, because that's a protection on our end, because what they were saying is there's been a lot of people that kind of leave and don't pay that last bill, and they've already refunded. So it was kind of give and take. We're going to try and drop down the deposit rate to $500, but then the deposit stays indefinite until they're actually done with the service, and then it could be refunded, so that at that time, if there is a remainder of a bill, we take the money to pay it, and then they get their check of whatever's left over. I would think that's only fair because we are taking a higher risk on dropping it down and testing this system out for the utility department in the loss, or maybe even, not gaining our funds back for individuals not paying.
I look at $500 is a lot of money for some people. So, and then they pay their bill on time, they're not delinquent, but they, at one point in time, have to come into the office and ask for a payment arrangement. And they pay that arrangement off, no delinquencies or anything like that. I just feel that's then they got to rotate again and go back through another 18 months. That's
If they're a good paying customer, we did agree that there would be no deposit, and that the first time they won't be assessed a deposit if they had to do a payment.
I understand. I don't understand all that. Yeah, we went through that.
I think in listening to it right now, if you rent an apartment, you have to put a deposit down.
Right.
And they hold that deposit till you move out.
That's correct.
And I think in this case, you're using our electric, you're paying a deposit to use it. It just ensures that we get our money at the end of your stay.
Y'all, you're not listening to what I'm saying. This customer pays their bill on time.
Understood.
There's no delinquencies, there's no late fees, but they come into a hardship one time, and they have to come into the utility office and ask for a payment arrangement.
Right.
The city allows 4 payment arrangements anyway.
Understood, but I'm just saying they wouldn't get their deposit. They get their deposit back when they leave the city or something. They're just not going to get it back after 18 months, or I don't know that we should give it back at all. I mean, unless they withdraw, or withdraw from the city utilities or move or go somewhere else. I'm not sure about that.
And it's not.
I wish I had more time to think about that one.
It's not necessarily going to be 500. My thing is because we're taking the risk of changing the policy on what the previous board set.
Mm-hmm.
I think that with the deposit, if there is a deposit, whether it's 500 or 385, that no, they should not get their money back until they're done using the utilities, for the simple fact that they have records and documentation that most of the majority of the reason why we have to lose out on this debt is because people leave and we're not able to get the last amount of their money because there is no deposit or there's not enough on file for their deposit to cover their last bill.
Yes, sir.
Alderman,
Alderman Kinsey, just let my comment. Go
So
ahead.
what you're saying, I'm just trying to understand here. What you're saying, if a person falls in hardship and they catch up that year along with having 4 payments, that at the end of that contract that they're drawing up with the city, that they should be able to recoup their money then?
They'll refund back
They
the
refund
deposit.
back.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mr. Stevens, do you have something?
I was just, I just try to answer all my best questions. The first item that we have on there first was that in a fiscal year, that a deposit will not be assessed on the first payment arrangement. And I think that kind of answers a little bit of what you're saying. However, I've kind of also understood a little bit, it's like maybe a mixing of the two, perhaps, that you're saying that if a person does have to make payment arrangements and they have a deposit, that they shouldn't, is that what you're referring
Yes,
to?
exactly.
Because
Should not be
the
penalized.
one-time
Yes.
thing, the first payment arrangement is covered.
Right.
So for an individual who is of good standing that has to make a payment arrangement because of financial
Right.
issues, the first payment arrangement, they would not have to have a deposit required based on what is proposed in this discussion.
Mr. Davis, let me ask you a question from a legal standpoint. Tonight, this item number 6, what action can the board take? Can the board approve this, or does it have to be brought back in the form of a resolution? Or the reason I'm asking that, if Alderman Best wants to amend what's in here, can she do that in the form of a motion? Does this have to be given direction tonight, and then it comes back for formal approval 2 weeks from now?
The board can do it either way. If there's a written policy that the board wants to adopt tonight that's clear, the board can by voice vote adopt that new policy.
By voice vote, and could she amend that in the form of
She can amend that.
an
You
adoption of
can
this?
strike a sentence and add a sentence in the written
If
policy.
she wants to and gets board approval?
Right, yes, sir.
Okay. And she could also, if somebody else just makes motion and second for this, she could do a substitute motion if that be the case, or would you rather have it
No,
first
no,
go around?
No, sir. Once a motion is made and seconded, it has to be voted on,
Okay.
unless the moving party agrees to the amendment.
I got you.
Question on the AMI. So if somebody's on AMI, do they have deposits? They will still have deposits.
AMI is strictly an internal policy as
So
far as our
pay-as-you-go will be a choice. Not everybody will be on pay-as-you-go. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And if you're on pay-as-you-go, you don't have a deposit.
Excuse me?
On pay-as-you-go, you don't have a deposit.
That is correct, because like I said, you're paying up front,
Right.
so therefore the city has no risk. You basically consume electric.
I'm on pay-as-you-go,
You-
so
you
I
can-
love it. I'm waiting for it to roll out. Let's go.
You consume electric until you run out of it and you put more money in.
Right.
Alderman Odom.
Mr. Sabatelli, have we done any modeling or data analysis of what is going to happen with if this deposit policy changes and then prepay comes into play? Because it looks like to me it may be more advantageous for somebody to stick with the deposit than go with the prepay.
It's possible, but, I mean, going to a $500 deposit for some people is going to be tough regardless. I mean, it just is, but, there's a lot of advantages to sticking with prepay anyway, because you become a smarter consumer, you can see what your consumption is going to be on a daily basis, that sort of thing. Or just, we didn't model out going to what the impact might be on prepay, because at this point, we don't know what the adoption rate is going to be. But but we did look at what our estimated write-offs could be if we do switch this and put the $500 cap on, and that would be approximately $72,000. That's what the city would be on the hook for an estimated increase in write-offs
Annually. And that will be paid for out of days cash on hand, out of the various enterprise funds?
Operating revenues, yes.
What do we receive when you turn them into the internal revenue for the people that's not have paid? How much money are we normally receiving back from that?
I'm sorry, you're referring to the debt set-off program?
Yes.
All of our overall collections are approximately $140,000. The largest chunk of what's returned is about $140,000 a year. What is coming back from debt set-off, I apologize, I don't want to give you a number because I don't know off the top of my head, but it's a substantial portion of it. The largest portion of that money coming back is from debt set-off. But I
You
will.
don't know how much it is?
I'm sorry, not off the top of my head. Like I said, it was combined from all of our collection avenues, internal and debt set-off, and our collection agency that we've utilized. It's approximately $140,000. But like I said, I don't have that number off the top of my head as far as how much specifically comes from debt set-off. I will say, though, that debt set-off, the money coming in from the state from debt set-off has reduced substantially over the last couple of years due to the change in state tax code and the way the withholdings are done, and so that because refunds are substantially less than what they were before the state changed their tax code.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution that's in there based on.
I don't think there's a resolution.
There's not a resolution. I think this is
It's a motion of support.
Yeah, to direct staff to bring, if we need, do we have a formal?
Well, he typed one
We don't
up.
need to formalize it. We don't need to, excuse me, sorry, Rick. We do not need to formalize this. This is a motion of support from the board, and we will institute these.
'Cause this is more of an internal policy for us on how we handle it at the business office.
Now, did you get a second to that?
Well, they don't need it, so I guess we just need to give the board direction and say, we agree with what's stated here.
Do we need to make a motion?
That's what I'm
You
asking.
don't need it, but I
Yes.
guess the question is, are we trying to act tonight so that tomorrow morning we have a new policy?
This would be
Yes.
If
effective
so-
July 1.
Yes.
That's what it said here, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
For residential customers,
So,
effective
so
July
we'll
1.
need the motion to verbalize what the new policy proposes to be, so that staff can implement that July 1.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Okay, did you withdraw your motion?
I'm gonna
Yeah,
verbalize.
She's gonna do the motion.
Okay,
I'm
you're,
gonna
I'll second it.
Yeah, okay, so I like to make a motion that we amend our current utility deposit schedule to include the following. That deposits will not be assessed on the first payment arrangements. Payment arrangements may be billed as installments. No late penalties or fees will be assessed if the payment plan is adhered to as agreed upon. Part B, per fiscal year, deposits will not be assessed for the first check returned for insufficient funds. Part C, new customers may pay deposits in installments with 50% due at the time service is established and the balance paid over 4 billing cycles. Payment arrangements will not be permitted until the deposit is paid. Part D, new residential deposits shall not exceed $500. Part E, deposits will be returned after 18 months, period. Alderman Best, is that what you wanted included? And these changes are not retroactive and become effective July 1.
Okay, you added in there that we're not, that we are giving the refund?
Because I knew that's what Alderman Best was going to add, correct?
Yes.
And just a point of clarification, you said will be returned after 18 months. So regardless of what happens, they're getting their money back after 18 months.
Well, I don't know, no, I guess okay, so I may have to restate that because I'm very unsure of what the current policy is. I'm going to be honest with you. I am unsure about that policy because we did not discuss that.
Are we sure we want to get the deposits back after 18 months?
No, but I was trying to put that in there and then we could take it out, but I was trying to put it in.
No, this is for, say for instance, I'll take myself for example. I've been here and I'm leaving.
Then you
the
can get
city,
your deposit back.
And then, but it's saying that you will not get your deposit refunded back to you if you make one payment arrangement.
Can you clarify, Jared, this is very confusing to us, and that's why I'm
Customers
confused.
always get their deposit back at the end of service.
Always.
We do not
Okay.
keep their money.
Okay.
Even if they had to go through some payment arrangements?
Even if they had to go through some payment arrangements,
Okay.
because that is our protection. Now, what we can do is if the customer so chooses, we can credit that towards their final bill, whatever that may be, and if there's a difference that's owed or refunded, they would get that difference, or we would get a check in that amount.
Yeah.
So I can amend my motion to remove that part D
I think that was.
Yes,
Now-
just so we're all on the same page, we thought Alderman Best was saying that if
Yes.
during your first 18-month trial period where you have a deposit with the city and you request an accommodation, a payment plan, one time that's allowed, that should not, the current policy is on the day, in the 17th month, in month 17, after 17 perfect payments, you come in and you ask for your free one-time accommodation. Alderman Best, I thought, was saying in the next month, you still get your deposit back.
That's
because
correct.
the current policy is to start in the 17th month and add 18 more months of clear sailing so that you have a credit history of
So I
perfect
don't know how
payment.
to however we want to articulate that.
Yes.
So I'm unsure on how to articulate.
So item D would provide that, consistent with the current policy, deposits will be returned provided that
It was really easy.
an accommodation plan has been met and satisfied within the first 18 months.
Just as a point of clarification, the refunded amount is actually in our fee schedule, which is item 15, item 14. I apologize, 16, sorry. Item 16, our fee schedule includes when the deposit is going to be refunded, and currently it states refunded after 18 months with good payment history.
Correct. And what we're saying now is under item D,
Sorry.
a payment plan that is initiated, and I'm thinking, and completed within 18 months shall be considered good payment history.
Shall constitute good payment
Yes.
history. Excellent, okay.
Oh, I like that.
Okay, so,
Thank you.
again, I don't think we need to, I think that needs to change. I don't think, because we're taking a higher risk of dropping down to a flat rate. You know, that's the reason why the previous board made the deposits the way they did. So to meet in the middle, there should not be a refund after 18 months. It should stay there, and then when they leave the city of New Bern's utilities, they get a refund. Or if they move somewhere and they're no longer the individual that has the account, because we're taking a greater risk, and the citizens need to understand that we're taking the greater risk of dropping the deposit so that we can help them make better payments and get on track with their other bills. So I will not vote yes for this unless we change it to where when you leave the utilities, you get your deposit back. Because if they leave and they owe us $800 and all we had was $300 and we gave it back to them, we take a hurt on that, and then don't we take taxpayers' monies to pay the difference, you know, if we're in debt?
Well, it comes out of electric.
Well, it comes out of the
That means you
electric.
might hold someone's deposit for 40 years.
I mean, but
Let's,
if,
could I interject here a moment? I'm going to rule that your original motion died for lack of second.
Okay, that's fine.
Yours.
Yes.
And now we have yours, and you haven't gotten a second.
Correct.
And so I would, not hearing, unless I hear a second, I would rule that yours has died for lack of second. And now let's just discuss this thing a little bit. And let me start with that discussion that 3 years or so ago, we started out on this journey to AMI. And we had no idea of the charted waters of where we would wind up. I thought, and I do think, we're going to wind up with prepay. We're going to educate the public more. The public's going to be more attuned to their bills, but not everybody. Similarly to going into Walmart and going through a self-checkout, you're probably going to have a kiosk or two around town and a city employee to assist folks in this new AMI implementation. Along those lines, I felt like and know that if nothing happens tonight, when 100% implementation takes place, there's going to be, at that time, probably a more successful, comprehensive analysis of this demand of this deposit. Now, we have a brand new Director of Electric Services. I've not heard a word out of this gentleman, nor probably has he had time to give his input. He might know of something up in Michigan or something that we totally are out of the loop on. And so you guys go ahead and do this tonight if you want to, but I think you're jumping the gun till we hear from this gentleman. But go ahead, Alderman Odom.
You said it well, Mayor.
Oh, don't let me go. I want your thunder on this.
That's exactly what I was going to say. We've got a new utility director. I think we don't know how the impact of AMI is going to be. It could be negative, it could be positive. It could be where we could be even more flexible than this. And to make a change tonight when we've had this policy in effect for, I think, 3 years now, and AMI is supposed to be fully implemented in 5-6 months, I think, by the end of the year, there could be some discussion at that point in time what we want to do. But, I mean, what Alderman Harris just recommended was actually more strict than the policy we have now as far as keeping the deposits until somebody actually terminates their service. So I think there's a lot of options, but I'm not in favor of just jumping the gun and doing
Alderman
something.
Harris, would you be willing to leave that part of it,
That's over there.
that part of it off right now so we can get this passed?
Yes, that's fine.
See, we got within the ad hoc committee some.
Well, that's what I'm
Because
saying,
we
because
didn't- yeah, we
I'm gonna pull a Miss Sabrina Bangle and say, can we just try it out and see what happens, for the simple fact that there's still people that are struggling to pay their bills, and 6 months of waiting to see what happens with AMI or when it comes out, people could still be underwater at that time in regards to the utilities bills. So if we have the abilities right now to fix that situation until we do have a better situation, let's go ahead and make that decision tonight. Go ahead.
Alderman
Sabrina.
Kinsey, do you have something?
Yes, sir. I agree with you and Alderman Odom to give the new director here an opportunity to express his experience and what we're experiencing tonight. And hopefully that we can probably move forward better.
Yes.
But let's give him an opportunity to participate in this.
6 months.
Mayor, I want to make a motion.
Yes, ma'am. Go right ahead.
That we adopt the changes to our utility deposit stating Part A per fiscal year. Do you want me to repeat all of
No,
this?
ma'am, if everybody has it in writing in front of them, that's fine.
Part B, deposits will not be assessed for the first check. Part C, new customers may pay deposit in installment. Part D, new residential deposits shall not exceed 500, period. These changes will not be retroactive and become effective July 1st.
Second.
Okay, at this time, we have a motion and a second. Is there board discussion on this item? Okay, at this time, I know we can have a voice vote, but I'd like to have a roll call.
Yes, sir, it's
And
fine.
let's start with Alderman Bingham.
Alderman Bingle,
Yes?
Alderwoman Harris,
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
No.
Alderman Kinsey,
No.
Alderman Best,
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
No.
Okay, and would you give the results of that?
It passed 4-3.
Okay. Let's go to item number 7, consider adopting. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens, you can, right.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, item number 7 before you tonight is a consideration for adopting a resolution approving financing terms for the Enterprise Resource Planning Project, which is our ERP, as you hear us refer to it. Essentially, we have requests for financing proposals that were issued by the Director of Finance. He has recommended that First Citizens Bank be utilized. While their interest rate is slightly higher at 3.22%, they offered a prepay with no penalty versus SunTrust, which was at 3.17 but did have prepay penalties. So Mr. Sabatelli or myself will answer any questions you may have.
Board have questions?
How many banks did we reach out to?
Sir, I believe we sent this out to 18 banks.
18?
Yes, sir.
And out of 18, First Citizens the only one that given us the best deal?
First Citizens, yes, sir. First Citizens provided us with the best deal. We received quotes from 3 banks.
Even though the manager said it was slightly high.
Yes, sir. When you look at the difference, there's only, particularly with there are fees associated with the lower interest rate. There's a $250 document fee, and there's also a $250 escrow fee. So when you add those together with the total interest that you would pay over the life of the loan, there's only a $130, $140 difference between the two. And because of the fact that First Citizens provided no prepayment penalties, we felt that was our best option. When you look at the lowest interest rate bank, which was SunTrust, if we prepaid after 1 year, they were going to charge us 3% of the balance. If it was year 2, it was 2% of the balance. Year 3 is 1% of the balance, which we felt was not conducive to what we are planning going forward with this AMI financing. With financing of the ERP system.
Essentially, Mr. Kinsey, for $100, we buy ourselves the option to be able to pay it off early.
That's a great option.
Very good. Thank you,
Summary,
sir.
thank you.
JR, my question
Yes,
is, it looks like you're borrowing $500,000.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the remainder? Have we already paid that?
The remainder has not been paid yet. We have only incurred about $500,000 worth of debt, worth of service up to date. There will be an additional financing arrangement into the future. I felt that it was more prudent to go ahead and take out this financing now for this original phase, as there's a possibility we could potentially pay cash for some of these services going forward. But at the moment, I felt it was more prudent to take out the financing for the $500,000.
Okay, but our contract, we have a contract with them, correct?
Yes,
For
ma'am.
about, what, 1.3? 1.2, 1.3, something in that
I
neighborhood?
think it was 1.25. We essentially have $750,000 remaining, which is the portion that we were getting ready to execute, actually, with regards to the utility billing. Is that correct, Chrissy? Is that 160 of that? I'm sorry.
Okay.
But we
So,
have the other portions, the
I
other
mean,
modules.
typically, we go ahead and either finance the amount, whatever. We have a contract. Are we contracted to pay that amount, or is it possible it could be less, or? Because we usually borrow, open the project fund, put the funds in there. I'm not used to seeing us do half a project and then going back and trying to, do we know that next year the interest rate could be 5%? You don't know that. If you've got a good interest rate now, wouldn't you have borrowed all the money you needed?
Alderwoman Bangle, that is a great question. The thing about it is this project is going to be paid for over the next 3 years, and it's going to it's a longer-term project. So to finance it in phases is very similar to what we did with AMI, which was a multi-year project as well. We felt that it was best to go ahead and pay for the immediate portion now with the financing, have that in place. We just felt it was most financially prudent because typically we wait closer to the middle or end of the projects before we actually just do some of the financing. Like I said, we just felt that this was the time to go ahead and do roughly a third of the project.
I'm going to ask you another crazy question. Okay, so you're asking for permission to finance, and we're going to finance it. What's it going to do to our budget? Now, will we see those payments in this next fiscal budget we're getting ready to adopt?
Yes, ma'am. It's already included.
And you only included the $500,000
Yes, ma'am.
amount?
Yes, ma'am.
That's interesting. Okay.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution approving financing terms for the Enterprise Resource Planning ERP project.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Harris, seconded by Alderman Astor. Is there further discussion?
A comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I will vote no, and I always like to give my reasons, just because the reason we're going with the slightly higher is because we can pay it off. So I still don't understand why we wouldn't have borrowed the full amount. If we want to pay cash, we can pay it off and have a good rate. So I always like to give my reasons when I vote no. Okay.
Mayor, just one more question. What is the annual debt service on this going to be? Is that the 43,000?
Yes, sir.
So it would be safe to assume that roughly that amount is going to be. I'm sorry, that's not right.
No,
That's the
I'm
finance
sorry.
charge.
No, that's not right.
So my question is, what would the annual debt payment be for this?
I'm sorry, you asked me too quickly. I apologize. I should have had that in hand.
Because essentially, it's going to be in 2 years. In the next budget cycle, it's going to be double whatever this amount is roughly.
I'm sorry. I should have had that in hand when we. This first year is going to be approximately $105,000, $110,000.
Over how many years have you borrowed?
It's over a 5-year period.
And that's in this budget, but the second half is not. It would be, you're going to have to find it essentially again, right? When you're doing next year's budget, you're going to find another $100 and some thousand for that debt service for the balance of the project.
Yes, sir. Yeah, and if there's a possibility we could pay cash for some of it, we will.
And if you remember, year over year, our cost of our current system will go down. We won't be paying the maintenance
So
on
we
our
should be
current
recouping
system.
savings
So
to
it'll,
offset.
at some point,
Yes.
it'll flip and we'll actually recoup savings.
Thank you.
That's a great point, thank you.
Any other questions by the board? We have a motion and a second at this time. Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
No.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
No.
Okay, motion carries. Item number 8, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is a resolution in support of the Highway 43 Connector Project. If you recall, at our May 22nd, 2018 board meeting, Alderman Odom reported on recent meetings that were held by the North Carolina Department of Transportation with respect to plans for the Highway 43 connector. This proposed resolution relays the city's support of the Department of Transportation's plan identified as alternate number 2. They produced about 5 different alternates, is that correct? It's also requests that DOT give consideration for the existing residential neighborhoods in that area with regards to sound impact along Trent Creek, Arcadia Village, and Craven Forest subdivisions. The various options that were there ranged from fully signalized intersections to hardly any intersections to basically a controlled access freeway. After going there, alternate 2 and speaking with some of the neighborhood residents and so forth and so on, the alternate 2 was found to probably be the best as far as our interest with regards to helping out the city grow the way it needs to, especially given that there is a large amount of land undeveloped that is kind of planned to be developed. So alternative 2 provides the ability to plan for that in the future. So did you have anything you want to add other than that?
All right. I think you summed it up very well. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, if there's no more questions, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution in support of the Highway 43 Connector Project.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Odom, seconded by Alderman Kinsey. All right, this time Alderman Astor has a question.
Mr. Stevens?
Yes.
Is there any way that we can place in this resolution the provisions of emergency vehicle turnarounds? You just can't imagine the situation that you have if you're responding to a motor vehicle crash. And what does that road run, north-south? Yeah, and you're responding down the northbound lane, or down the northbound lane, and the motor vehicle crash is on the southbound lane, and you have to go all the way to the next intersection or the exchange to turn around and go back. I mean,
The advantageous thing about alternate 2's design is, so as you, and bear with me for a second to kind of answer your question. As you progress from 17 going north, as you're going towards 70, on what will be the final completion of the 43 connector, alternate 2 will provide some left turn onlys. So if I'm driving up that road into some of the existing drives, which would be, I think it's Savoy that turns right there where you have a left turn only. And then there's a signalized intersection that's proposed just north of that, which will be for a future connected road. And then you would run to where the T is currently, where 43 connector comes down in T's that exist today. There would be a signalized intersection there along with one more along that corridor. So I think with regards to options for emergency vehicular accessibility and turnarounds, that it exists pretty well, that we will have some there.
okay, say, are you thinking maybe every quarter to 3/4 of a mile or something like that? Or
I'd say 1/4 to 1/2 a mile is probably a pretty good assessment.
We asked them about that, Bobby, and they've got to make sure, they obviously have their standards when they build a highway on what those distances are. They want to make sure that it doesn't interfere with some of the right turn in, right turn out only,
Sure.
because then people are just going to shoot across there.
Yeah, I understand, but I'm referring to, like you see out here on the freeway through New Bern. You know, if you get on in Pembroke, at one time, you had to go all the way to 17 to turn around to come back, and we had Bob Maddox to put in a couple of those crosswalks. And but you're saying you think there'll be enough of that on this road to accommodate a turnaround for emergency vehicles?
I do. With regards to signalized intersection, the only concern would be is if DOT makes modifications to allow for additional, reduction of soundproofing that corridor. They could potentially narrow the right-of-way, which would narrow the median. If they narrow that median, it could potentially impact that left turn only kind of options, which would take you to the signalized intersection. But I still feel very comfortable with a signalized intersection at 17, and then the next one being just north, right, basically where the end of Craven Forest is now. It'd be another one, so it's really only about I think it was about a mile to the T almost. And then you'd have two more in addition to that as you progress along up towards Highway 70.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions at this time? Can I have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle?
Alderman Bingle?
Yes?
Alderwoman Harris?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 9, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is a resolution in support of changing or altering the Alfred Cunningham Memorial Bridge schedule. We have heard several different concerns about the drawbridge schedule that exists currently. This current schedule allows the bridge to open at will or on demand 2 or 3 times per hour sometimes. This not only creates traffic congestion, but is also inconvenience to many motorists, local residents, and businesses that are in and around downtown, especially on weekends and oftentimes around rush hour in the evenings at 5 p.m. and in the morning around 8. The resolution that is before you tonight proposes that this schedule be altered and amended to open only on the half hour of every hour, basically meaning, for an example, 1:30, 2:30, 3:30, 4:30, and so on. I'm happy to answer any kind of questions you may have.
Alderman Kinsey?
So the time of the changing of the schedule is to prevent congestion due to traffic flow at prime time, like 5 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, I guess.
Somewhat that, and there have been concerns expressed about the fact that it'll open up for one boat coming through, and then 5 or 10 minutes later it has to open again for another boat that comes through. The intent of opening at certain times allows both the motorists and the boaters to know when the openings are, so that way they could avoid the bridge if you're a motorist, or they could queue up so that everybody could go through at the same time, and that way you limit the amount of impact you have to each party. That's kind of really the intent of trying to develop a strict schedule. Right now, it's on call, so you can imagine on the weekends when it's nice and windy and you have a lot of sailboats and nice weather, you have one boat go out, and then 15 minutes later, another boat goes out, and then 15 minutes later, another boat goes out.
And it's been impacting, this is a Ward 1, I guess, issue, so it's been brought up. And I have been getting many complaints from people late to work, whatever, because they get there and invariably it's 8 o'clock or that time where they have to be someplace and the bridge is open. If they knew what time the bridge was going to be open and closed, they could rearrange their route or their suggestion. Now, I did get information about the Beaufort Channel drawbridge, just to kind of get another idea what happens there. And the drawbridge does open on the hour and the half hour from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. From Monday through Friday, the drawbridge does not open from 6:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. and again from 4:30 to 6 p.m. And then from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. it opens on signal. So what that means, from 10 p.m. to 6 o'clock in the morning, if somebody needs to get through, it's at will like it is normally. So it may be that we need to refine this a little bit. I'll be honest with you, no idea. Really, I asked for this change to come on here. I feel like we need to do something. So if we want to debate it and talk about it, that we have it's mostly for the work traffic, people trying to get into town, during our work hours, our rush hours.
Too.
Yeah, during our rush hours. So
my only concern, because I just go over the bridge, not familiar with the process, is there someone that's in there 24 hours that opens the bridge?
24
So
hours.
if we adopt this resolution for on the half hour and there's no boats, are we just gonna skip over that, or they're just gonna open it, wait for somebody not to come through and close it?
No, they would not open it for nothing.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's perfect.
If there's boats queued up, ready to go, then it would open based on what the proposed schedule would be.
Okay,
Alderman Odom?
Mayor, I agree with the lady that spoke earlier tonight. I think just once per hour is probably not enough. I would like to support the schedule, I guess, that Beaufort had. I think top of the hour and half hour, that's 2 times an hour. Everybody pretty much knows that's when it's going to happen. We talked about it today. If a boater misses it by 5 minutes, he's got to go back and sit at the dock for 55 minutes to wait, whereas now wait for half an hour, which is, I think, is more reasonable.
how long?
Could
does
we
it
just
take?
restrict though I'm just concerned about that almost 7:30 to 8:30 hour. That's what I'm concerned about. And then again, 4 to 6, somewhere in that. It's that, and with the way the traffic is going to back up when James City starts, all that construction, I have a lot of concerns.
Well, I just want to know when it opens up, how many minutes does it take for the process for it to be shut down? And then 10, 15, if it takes 10 minutes or 15 minutes to do that, there's only 15 minutes in between the next time it has to open up. So that's not conducive to the individuals that are on the bridge either. So I would agree with, once during, on the half hour, or have a better restriction, because, I've sat on that bridge for like 10 or 15 minutes, and if it breaks down, that's even more time that these people are inconvenienced on their way to work or wherever they're going, so.
Alderman Bingham, did you want to?
Yeah, I do want to address some of your comments too. What the next steps? This would just be a resolution, and I believe it's going to go to NCDOT or to the Coast Guard.
We would probably copy both, but we're sending it to NCDOT specifically because they are the owner-operators of the bridge. However, any kind of approval of bridge openings and closings requires the Coast Guard's approval.
Okay.
So basically, NCDOT would have to agree to our schedule and then submit it to the Coast Guard for their approval.
Okay, so it's a couple-step process. Come to the microphone, because if you have any other questions, we want to make sure that everybody can hear you at home.
Well, actually, after it reaches the Coast Guard, they will post it as open for public comment before it is changed, and then it can go to the United States Code of Federal Regulations, where it's actually published. So it is, because I researched all this when I first moved here. I would say that the marina residents do not want it to open at will. We all realize that is insane. Mechanically, if nothing else. Goodness gracious. Most bridges, and if you go to the DOT website, there is an interactive map of all drawbridges in the state that they operate, and you click on it, and it'll tell you how they operate. I agree 100% that some fixed times that everybody can work with is what most people are agreeable to. Once an hour, especially in the summer and busy times and tourist times, and that bridge has got 3, 4, 5 sailboats and other people waiting to go through, that bridge is going to be open a long time if it only opens once an hour. Right now there are multiple, rush hours are already covered from 6:30 to 8:30. It may open at 7:30. That kind of thing is already in the CFR for this bridge. Also an evening rush hour. But then, in the summertime, the bridge does not open between 2 and 6:30. If you miss one of those openings, you are floating out there for the whole afternoon waiting to get back to your slip. So that's a factor. So you've got many, many options that are in there already. And so my question would be, are you erasing the entire operating procedure and wanting to turn it into once an hour no matter what?
No, I think this was just a step in a direction. I don't
Okay.
believe we were trying to. We were looking at all the options. We're getting lots of complaints from motorists.
Oh, well, you know, everybody. I mean,
lots of complaints from motorists, so we're trying to find that win-win for everybody, and that where we could satisfy our boaters, but also satisfy the working people and the motorists coming down. So, I'm amenable to a solution, as Alderman Odom said, okay, the hour and the half hour, but, no openings from a certain time in the morning. I'd like to have, I don't know what.
What does the
They
CFR
already
currently
exist.
say?
Pardon?
What does the CFR currently state for the morning hours?
It's either 6:30 to 8:30 or 6 to 8, something like
For
that.
pleasure craft?
Pardon?
That's just for pleasure craft, correct?
Oh, commercial and emergency vehicle, if they're
Right.
boats, sure, it opens for
Well,
them
if
at
it's
any
all-
time.
Maybe we need to educate somebody at the bridge then, because they're certainly opening. I was coming through there the other day.
There's provisions in the existing document that allow them to open it directly at 5 o'clock.
Well,
It
what
says
about
it may
directly at 8
open.
o'clock? He was open the other morning at 5 minutes to 8.
Yeah.
And that's.
They
maybe
are
that's-
very, very specific. One day we were waiting to come through at 4:30 on Sunday or something. And, he said, because we said, we wanted to, to the bridge, we wanted to confirm that you are on this particular schedule for the summer. And he said, yes, I will open promptly at 4:30, if that was the time. And I said, we'll be there promptly at 4:30. They are specific.
So I've got it right here if you want to know.
Oh, good, somebody printed
What
it.
the current one is. The Alfred Cunningham Memorial Bridge over the Trent River shall open on demand except for the following. Morning, Monday through Friday, the draw shall remain closed for pleasure vehicles from 6:30 to 8:30, except the draw shall open at 7:30 a.m. to any pleasure vessel. Okay? Afternoon. Huh? The afternoon, Monday through Friday, the draw shall remain closed for pleasure vehicles from 4 to 6, except the draw shall open at 5 p.m.
And that's to prevent backups on every,
I know, but that's the problem.
But it
5
opens
o'clock
at
is
5
the problem.
o'clock when the rush hour is, and that is
Correct.
when we're having the most significant
That is
backups
correct.
in downtown and everything else. The summer season, from May 24th through September the 8th, the draw may remain closed on Sundays and federal holidays from 2 to 7 for pleasure vehicles, except the draw shall open on the hour and the half hour for any vessels awaiting passage. The draw shall open also upon request at all times for public vessels of the United States, vessels for public safety, commercial vessels, tugs, or with or without barges, and all vessels in distress. That is the current operation.
Right, so ma'am, if the bridge was to say not open from, let's just say, 7:30 to 8:30 in the morning, would that really, during the week, would that mess up boaters?
No, I think any published, everybody recognizes a rush hour, and as long as and what, does that have a date on it when that was? Because it used to read may open, meaning it was a gray decision-making era option.
It's July 1, 2017.
That's a revision then. It used to say May.
There's no reason for it to open at 8, and there's no reason to open at 5.
Well, I think it's probably fine with the exception of that 5 p.m.
Yeah, and the 8 a.m. too.
And it used to say, it used to, that's a newer version. It used to say may, meaning it could, it couldn't, the bridge tender had the option. So that's actually a change.
And that exempts even a commercial vessel, correct?
It's pleasure vessels only.
Pleasure vessel, yeah.
Commercial vessels and
Yeah, I said it exempts commercial vessels.
it exempts commercial vessels.
So,
I can ask.
So am I hearing from the board members, for step 1, open on the hour and the half hour? Am I getting okays on that? Okay, so step 2, the, closing times for busy traffic?
Could I just make a suggestion?
Sure, would love that.
Could we take what's in the code now?
And just revise it?
Let's revise it and bring it back in 2 weeks. That way we're not
Okay.
reinventing the wheel. Because I think pretty much what's there is not bad. It just needs to be tweaked.
Okay, I'll agree to that. Just want to make sure we're moving forward and not kicking the can down the road.
That is perfect.
Okay, so Mr. Attorney, we would take that. I would like to look at the language that makes sure that times that they're closed in the morning and afternoon are not 8 or 7:30 or 8 o'clock, and are open at 5 o'clock, because that's really what's stopping everybody up. And if we could revise that, that would be great. And at least it's their language, it's all in their language, the way it is, and I could live with that.
Just remember, commercial vehicles can go through at any time, which means probably quite a few of those boats at Bridgepoint that have commercial licensing can go, any commercial fisherman would qualify for that. So if he comes through at 8 o'clock and he's most likely a commercial boat, commercial vessel.
Oh, I don't know.
I think-
Can we tell them? I don't think we can tell them.
No, I
They
think,
can't
I mean,
go
it
through.
specifically states that commercial vessels. Is that right?
I believe that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It-
So, I mean, if
It's
if
very
you got-
specific to pleasure vessels. is
Yeah,
what
our
it says.
ordinance is very, or the resolution is specific to pleasure vessels, but that it exempts government vessels and commercial vessels.
Yes, sir.
They can come through any time and open on demand.
Yes, sir.
So
And
what
the
I'm
question-
saying is, any of those yachts that are sitting down at the hotel that have a commercial fishing license, which would probably be quite a few of them, they can legally go through anytime
We
they
can,
want
I
to.
can get those specifics for you, and I doubt seriously most of those yachts most people just live on them down there. They're residential. But we can get that from the dock master in no problem. I think we could provide you with that information, at least
Well,
for
it doesn't make any
Bridgepoint.
difference. Well, I was just saying that if they're a commercial vessel, they're exempt.
Sure.
So,
Okay. So is that the pleasure of the board to just direct
Yes.
the city attorney to bring it back at our next meeting?
absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you for your
Thank you.
input. We do
Oh,
appreciate it very much.
Thank you for being here and hearing and listening and talking. That's great.
That's our job.
Well, all city councils are not the same.
Welcome to Newbern. Okay, in the mayor's absence, I'm going to move along to item number 10, consider adopting a budget ordinance amendment for the 2017-18 grants fund.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Bingle. The fire department has received a $2,000 grant from the Petco Foundation for the care of the department's arson dog. The budget amendment acknowledges receipt of these grant funds, which requires no match. There's a memo included in your packet. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem, make a motion that we consider adopting an amendment to the FY 17-18 grant fund operating budget to include the $2,000 grant for the fire department.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Alderman Astor and a motion by Alderperson Harris, a second by Alderperson Harris. And Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll. I don't know where you left off. I guess it would be Alderman Odom, I think.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Bingle?
Yes. Okay, moving to item number 11. Consider adopting an ordinance amendment to the 2017 roadway improvements project fund. Yes, I know. We would like to move this.
We want to, if you don't mind, Mayor Pro Tem Bingle, we would like to move items number 11 and 12 in the order to make sure that we adopt the budget, because both of these will be contingent upon budget approval. So once we get down to item number 17, if you will, we'll insert those at 11 and 12 after 17 so that we can address them at that point.
So do we need to make a motion to do that, or do we
Yes.
just do that? We do need to make a
Amend the
motion.
order of the agenda to take items 11 and 12
Okay, can
to...
I have a motion, please, to move items number 11 and 12 to now become after item 17?
So moved.
Alderman Astor, and a second. Anybody second it?
Second.
Okay, Alderman Odom seconds. Is it a voice vote? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, take it away, Mayor.
Are we now at item
On number
13?
13, yes,
13?
Yes, sir.
Okay, item number 13, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. This is an ordinance to amend Article 3, City Water and Sewerage Systems of Chapter 74, Utilities. House Bill 436 was passed by the North Carolina General Assembly in July 2017 to amend Chapter 162A of the General Statutes. In this modification, it added Article 8, which was regarding system development fees. This amendment that's before you tonight provides for uniform authority to implement system development fees for public water and sewer systems throughout the state. The city's code of ordinances needs to be amended to establish the water sewer system development fees and provide the city authority to charge these fees. There's a memo that's included in your packet from Mr. Hughes, and he and I will be glad to answer any questions you have, as well as the attorney.
Well, the only question I have, we actually don't have any choice. We kind of have to adopt this.
If you want to have a fee,
Yes.
Yeah.
this is the only choice. Yes, sir.
The only question I have, Mr. Hughes, maybe you can come up and answer this for me. I think we're using 3.5, 4 million gallons a day, and we probably have 6.5 million. And I know that maybe we're 15, 20 years out from needing to expand the sewer plant. But under this resolution, we have to bank the money, put it in sinking fund, whatever, but use it within a 5-year period. Is that correct?
Mayor, there's a couple of different methodologies that the new bill allows you to use for how to capture the money and then expend those funds. Because we don't have any planned large capital expenditures like plant expansions in the next 5 years, the most advantageous thing for the city to use is what's titled the buy-in method in the bill. Essentially, it says that we have excess capacity, as you just mentioned, in our treatment plants that has already been bought and paid for by New Bern. So incoming development is essentially buying into those already expended costs. One of I think the easiest ways myself and Mr. Sabatelli have identified to bring the funds in and then expend those is basically just to use that for debt, to pay off debt service that we owe on improvements that have already been made to create the capacity that exists for the development coming in. A couple of different methodologies.
You wouldn't think of that as being operational use rather than capital banking?
There's some
Is that
very
not operational to do that?
Very specific language and details in the bills on how you have to set up each one and how you have to calculate the rates. Essentially, you have to kind of pick a path and go down. We evaluated the 3 options that are allowed by the House bill. The buy-in method made the most sense for New Bern, and in talking to some peers across the state, I think the buy-in method makes the most sense for most systems as well.
So, but what this actually will do, whereas you would have normal debt structure, you will negate that structuring of normal debt by paying it off with this. But in turn, 20 years up the road, when you need another 6 million gallons, you're going to be putting out $35 to $70 million for plant expansion. Is that not the way that's going to work?
Yes, sir. So if you, the other option is more of a plan for future cost option. If you have an improvement that you knew, if we were a lot closer, if we were using 80 or 90% of our plant capacity and we knew in the next 5 years we were looking at a plant upgrade and we knew what those concrete costs were going to be, it's a more appropriate to try to start bringing some of those monies in from new development to offset those future costs. Since our plant expansions are further than 5 or 10 years down the road, and maybe even beyond that window, it's a little harder to nail down exactly what those costs are going to be and get an appropriate fee today. So when you have such a large window between when you're bringing the fees in from new development and when you will expend the monies, the best methodology to use is the buy-in method, and just use that to recoup some of the funding that's already been spent by the utility payers of the systems to create that capacity.
Yeah, questions, sir?
Just a question, I guess. If what I understand, you're saying that going forward, these fees that are collected are going into a fund. That fund is going to be used to repay the debt service on the project that's already been completed, right?
Correct.
So is that when is there going to be a point where our existing debt service is then paid for, and then what do we do with this money we're taking in?
That would probably, in all likelihood, automotive, as debt rolls off, what we've been able to do is smaller portions of debt have rolled off in the last few years. We've been able to utilize that offset at rate increases. We have been a long time since we've had any rate increases in the water and sewer, and we haven't had the luxury like we did in the electric to have any big reduction in our operating costs like we saw with the Kempen deal. We're continuing to pile on operational costs year after year. The rates, I think I've showed you the revenue charts from the last 2 or 3 budget meetings. We're really not making a climb that parallels our growth with our revenue. So what we've been able to do with smaller debt amounts that have rolled off, that's allowed us to basically take that money back into operations and keep the rates stable as operating expenditures have continued to increase over the past 10 or 15 years.
So when I'm 84 years old, 20 years, I will be paying for a plant expansion that I'll never see, is the way this structuring will be. Is that correct?
You may not be paying for any plant expansion.
Well, I might not. I might not.
In concept, Mayor, this system will encourage that outcome because there will not be a war chest of tens of millions of dollars to pay for that next plant. So rates will have to be increased to cover that debt service as new users come on and help minimize that debt going forward. But
the only thing I can hope is that General Assembly will alter this present draconian decision that we have no control over at this stage. Maybe that bill, maybe a bill will correct this. But we really actually don't have any choice.
no, sir. It's this way or no way.
So, City Attorney, so any new developments coming in, they would have to pay a fee for the water and sewer, correct?
Yes, ma'am. Nothing is changing in that respect. All new sewer users will pay what used to be called a capacity fee, and now will be called a system development fee, and it will be slightly lower, Mr. Hughes?
Yes, sir.
So the fee's going down a little bit because of the math that's being used. So none of that changes. It's just once we have it, what can we do with it?
Well, kind of the good news is that if the board is very attentive and the staff is in sync with the board, as you artificially reduce the debt structure because of this, we should commensurately reduce the rates. And I mean, I'm kind of
Yes, sir.
saying what you just said.
Yes, sir.
Knowing that at such time as we have to go borrow this big bundle of money, that we weren't able to put the money in the old sunk under the mattress, the rate's going to go up. But
Yes, sir.
we don't have a crystal ball on that, so that's the way this is structured right now, and we have no control over it.
With that said, Mayor, if there's no more comments, I'd like to make a motion to adopt an ordinance to amend Article 3, City Water and Sewerage System of Chapter 74 Utilities.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Harris, seconded by Alderman Bingle. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 14, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is in relation to the previous one that will adopt an ordinance to establish the schedule of system development fees and connection fees for water and sewer customers. There's a memo that's included, and happy to answer any questions.
Board have questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt an ordinance to establish the schedule of system development fees and connection fees for water and sewer customers.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 15, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. This is a resolution for adoption that approves the classification pay plan for fiscal year 18-19. Previously, we used to include this in the budget ordinance, but after conferring with Mr. Davis, our attorney, he thought it best that we pull this out and actually approve this as a separate item. So essentially what this does, this approves the classification and pay plan for the various positions that we have within the city, as well as their salary ranges, and employees can fall anywhere within that salary range based on where they are as far as tenure and so forth and so on. So I'm happy to answer any kind of
Okay, does
questions.
the board have questions?
Mr. Stevens, if you just explain, I've asked this question before. So the difference between the one we had and this one we're seeing here is the adjustments you've made based on the salary study that you did. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct. There were some adjustments that were made to positions and where they fell within the grades. To my knowledge, the salary ranges did not adjust or barely anything at all. It was the positions changing grades based upon where the study showed that they should be paid based on the market. So the salary ranges, I don't know, have modified. The classification and where certain positions fall under grade 6 or 7 or 10 or whatever it may be, some of those modified. So that is basically the changes that you'll see in here.
So that's changed, and then, so this is in here, and then employees that went into different grades or anything would be impacted. And then if the budget passes and whatever the increase we give in salary is above and beyond, that is not categorized in this amount, correct?
No, ma'am, that is not. You're approving the class of the position and the salary range and grade of which they operate in.
So the salary study, though, basically is a separate item from the ensuing year's budget.
The
That
salary,
you were
yes.
you had
The
some
salary study-
disenfranchised fee structures that you have corrected that have absolutely nothing to do with the ensuing year's budget.
That is correct. The salary study was approved in this previous fiscal year. We have performed that, and the findings have been received, and we have modified the employees in this fiscal year already, and this confirms the positions and where they will fall in the classifications for the upcoming fiscal year.
If there's no more comments, Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the classification pay plan for fiscal year 2018-19.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Harris, seconded by Alderman Astor. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom.
Yes.
Alderman Best.
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw.
Yes.
Alderman Astor.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris.
Yes.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 16, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. The item number 16 is the ordinance amending the schedule of fees and charges that will be consistent with what we will be charging our customers for the upcoming fiscal year. As part of the budget process, the board annually adopts this amended schedule of fees and charges. It identifies in one place all of the fees and charges charged by the city. So the fees that you have before you tonight, there's a memo that's included in your packet for fiscal year 18-19 that will become effective on July 1 of 18. There are two schedules that we have for you. One schedule does not reference the utility deposit cap because we didn't know what was going to happen tonight. The other one does, which includes the $500 cap. So since you have approved that one, we will be looking for you to adopt an ordinance amending the schedule of fees that includes the $500 utility deposit cap. There were various sections. You can see those in your memo that were modified. Section 5, Parks and Recreation. Section 7 of Police. Section 10, Refuse. Section 11, Utilities Electric. Section 12, Utilities Water and Sewer. And Section 13, Utilities Sewer Pretreatment. Happy to answer any kind of questions the board may have.
Board have questions?
Okay, I'm trying.
Mark, is trash pickup, is the vehicle tax in that as well?
It is not, sir. The board chose not to amend the vehicle registration tax. However, the sanitation increase is included in there as directed by the board.
Mr. Foster, I didn't see it, but I just want to make sure, because the art stuff is not in there, correct? We removed that? The art, old firm, we removed that, right? The art fees and stuff?
They are in there. We did not remove those, but that'll come at a later time. For 408 Hancock, is that what you're referring to?
But on here, they're not listed.
Okay, if they took them out, then they're out, yes.
I didn't see them, but I just want to make sure that, because I know we voted previously, Odom removed them, and we passed it, so I just want to make sure before I vote on this one that it's still the same.
Okay, so a couple of things. One, parking. I don't see our parking fine in there. Would it not be in our fees?
No, ma'am.
Because it's going to somebody else?
It'll be in the ordinance. We're going to amend the code.
But it's not in the fees collected?
Yeah, we can amend that later to put it in there, but step one is to get the code straight. Our code doesn't provide for any of that, so step one is we have to authorize it in the code and then adopt the fee. And we can amend, adopt
Okay,
this.
but I thought we've adopted the ordinance, right? For parking enforcement and the fee for $25 for parking tickets?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Months ago, I thought you meant the new parking arrangement, I'm sorry.
No, for a parking ticket.
Yes, ma'am.
A parking ticket
Yes,
now,
ma'am.
it's gone from 5 to 25. Where is that in the schedule of fees?
I don't know.
It's not, because it was referenced in the ordinance, specifically in the ordinance, we did not reference it here.
Okay, do we need to reference it here?
We can, I like it there. We can add that at some of the time. I
And-
like one-stop shopping.
Okay, and then please direct me on which one about the utility stuff is in there. I can't find it, because both of them tell me 2 times highest bills in the last 24 months for the deposit. So that's in both versions. Maybe I'm not looking in the right place under electric. Should it be in the red line version?
If you look at the red line version, there should be one that, it still says 2 times highest bills in the last 24 months, but underline it says not to exceed $500.
It should be on page 119, or beginning on 119 of your agenda packet. At the top, it will actually say of that page, red line version with deposit capped at $500.
Yeah, I was trying to find it in the...
And I'm going to try to find the exact page where
That's
that
one
is.
of 9, did you say?
119 is where the beginning of that
Right.
$500 cap.
And I'm in there, but when I get to utilities, which is on...
So if you look at page 126 says 2 times highest bills in the last 24 months not to exceed $500. That is about the 8th or so line item down.
Oh, okay, I see that up above. But then, the commercial industrial is staying the same.
We have not adjusted that.
All right, so fee if payment is not made in night drop as agreed. You've got $100 there. And then you have late penalty payments received after the due date, 5% of monthly bill. I thought that's what we talked about eliminating.
Yes, ma'am. Those fees stay the same. We just have an opportunity to waive them on the payment arrangements. Well, from what was agreed to earlier.
Okay. So would the motion that has to be made have to state that it has the $25 parking fee in there?
No, ma'am.
I'm still confused about that, I'm sorry.
It's Finance Director is refreshed me that it's the fee itself is in the code. I like to have it here as well, just so there's one-stop shopping.
I can make a motion that would...
Yeah, why don't you make the motion and simply add that the fee schedule reflect the parking violation that's presently in the code.
So I'm going to make a motion that we adopt, an ordinance amending the schedule of fees and charges, of which I'd like to add the parking fee of $25, which is stated already in the ordinance.
Yes, ma'am.
And that is for the
Red line version.
red line version that has the $500 cap on
And
the
everything
deposits.
else associated with
And-
our motion on
That is correct.
deposits.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion by Alderman Bingle, seconded by Alderman Astor at this time. Is there discussion? Not seeing any discussion. Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris?
No.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
No.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
No.
And what was your total there, Madam City Clerk?
It is 4-3 in favor.
Okay. Let's go to item number 17, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As you recall, we've had numerous budget workshops to discuss our budget for the upcoming fiscal year of 18-19. Before you tonight is the actual budget ordinance, which is the final step in our adopting a budget to work from for the next fiscal year. I am happy to answer any kind of questions you may have. We have made all the modifications that the board has requested, and we're happy to answer any kind of questions you may have.
Could you just go through the salient points of the budget?
Say that one more time, sir.
Could you just go through the
the salient points.
Salient points.
Okay, I'll go through. I'm just going to refer to Mr. Sabatelli's memo that's included in your packet. As directed by the board, and these will be modifications of what the manager's recommendation was. The salary increases for the board and mayor were removed. Additionally, the advertising budget was reduced. Page 113, police, as directed by the board, 2 police telecommunicators positions were added. Additional funds were also added in the amount of $25,000 for animal control. Parking on page 116, as directed by the board, personnel services were adjusted to reflect staffing needs of this organization, and additionally the fuel costs were removed. Page 66 of fire, as directed by the board, 6 new fire specialist positions were added to personnel services. Additionally, other line items were adjusted due to the increase in staff, such as things that are operational, medical, professional services, uniforms, safety supplies. Parks and Recreation admin, as directed by the board, funds were added for the rental of the Union Point Park stage. Parks and Recreation grounds, page 102, we added for cemetery preservation and playground equipment, the amounts as directed by the board. In the Public Works streets, page 152, the board requested that additional funds be added for street resurfacing. We have included that. Solid waste, page 161, the organization was removed from the general fund, made into an enterprise fund under the solid waste organization, and all related expenses followed, and appropriate debt service, shared services, and contingency organizations were established at that time. Debt service, additional debt service payments were added to cover financing for Oaks Road, Old Airport Road, and Trent Road resurfacing projects as directed by the board. Some debt service was reduced in some organizations due to a change in financing arrangements. Contingency, if you recall, the proposed budget put a significant amount of money into contingency. We've reallocated that now to the different departments based upon the board's decisions. So that contingency item was decreased based on the increases we saw in the various departments. And revenues, general fund revenues were adjusted to reflect the board's direction to appropriate fund balance, and interfund transfers and transfer supports were adjusted as well to reflect those changes above. In the water, sewer, and electric funds, shared services, those adjusted somewhat based on some of the adjustments that we made. This was offset by an increase in contingency line item that we have for each of those funds. The electric fund revenues increased due to the added interfund reimbursement from the newly created solid waste fund. This was offset by an increase in contingency, so we just took the money of the reduction that you saw on the operational expense side and put it into contingency. That will basically be all the adjustments that were made by the board, and happy to answer any.
I think there was some misunderstanding about the fire inspector position, whether or not there was or wasn't.
The fire inspector was recommended by the budget that I provided. The board did not modify that or take it away or give us direction to take out the inspector, so it's still in the budget.
Well, and I guess we've got all next year to talk about this, but if we're going to add 6 new fire positions, I was wondering if we couldn't find some fire staff that were certified or in inspecting, to where you could, if you're going to move some things around, maybe have one inspector on a part-time basis on Elizabeth Avenue, one out on Thurman Road, and the rest of them at the main station. I'm not a micromanager on that, but we do have the concern with the where we are with inspections. We're 18 months behind, is what I'm hearing. I know, again, that does or doesn't have to do with this budget as to whether or not we outsource and do some contracting to get that brought up, or is incorporated in these 6 new positions. Is there the possibility of hiring additional staff to have that background? That's your area,
Yeah,
sir.
Mr. Mayor, let me just say, I had a long conversation with the fire chief about this, and the fire chief is currently changing his policies where, well, let me back up a step. A fire inspector goes into a business and performs a fire inspection. If there's a violation, that fire inspector has to go back in 30 days to re-inspect, give the business owner time to go back and make repairs. What the fire chief is currently doing is he's changing his policy so that re-inspection will not have to be performed by the fire inspector. The re-inspection will be performed by a person that is qualified and probably have to have his fire inspector certification, at least a level 1 certification, but from the fire specialist groups. They would actually take the engine and ride to that business and run in and do the re-inspection. That way he's only in that business for just a few moments, and it doesn't disrupt if they were to actually have a fire call while they're doing the re-inspection. So the re-inspections are going to be performed by fire specialists, just like was recommended by you, just like what you were talking about. To do it any other way, there is so many certifications required for a fire inspector, just like a building inspector. To become certified as a firefighter and maintain the training and certifications that's required for a firefighter, and then try to do all the training that is required and certifications required to become a fire inspector. We're going to send our people to school, and they're going to stay in school most of the time. You know, the way the fire chief has surveyed other cities, and that's what they are doing. I really feel that this is going to give the fire inspector a lot of opportunities to get caught up.
Do you feel okay that we do not need another fire inspector position with what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the fire specialists that are on duty now, the firefighters, will actually be doing the re-inspections.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
But now, currently, in addition to Danny Hill, are there not several firemen that are doing inspections?
Well, let's get the fire chief up and ask him that question.
Yes, sir.
Number one, when a fire comes on board with us, they are going to be required to go through 240 some hours. So it's going to be kind of difficult for them to be adding the inspector on that. But one of the things that we have done is to try to, re-inspection is the big problem. So we have actually made it a part of our career development now that you will have to have fire inspector qualifications. Don't necessarily be the inspector that's going there on the daily ins and outs of doing the inspections, but re-inspections. Because re-inspections is every time we go do an inspection, we're going to find something small. It may be something as small as the fire extinguisher out of date. We have to go back in 30 days to do a re-inspection. That will eliminate that. So now when you put on the growth that we're having for required inspections, the inspection department can keep up with what's going on with the additional fire inspector.
Yeah, and you got to remember also, this was taking place before I retired, but we've got one level 3 fire inspector. What's Danny, the fire marshal?
We have 2. The fire marshal's a level 3, and then the deputy fire marshal's a level 3.
But the growth like you have, the expansion, I'll just use the hospital, for example. When that construction, when they start doing the drying in and stuff out there, he'll be out there every day, correct?
That has to be a level 3.
Yeah, and then, if, for example, like Hatter's Yachts, when he goes in that building, he's there for a week, doing that building. So the large industries is where Danny Hill stays all the time. Mm-hmm. And then the other 2 inspectors are doing the small businesses, like in downtown and stuff like that.
Well,
in the schools.
I think Mr. Hill actually on TV indicated we were 18 months behind. Now, is that true or not?
We were approximately 18 months behind, yes.
Okay, and so.
But that, let me clarify that. It's a little bit blown out of proportion and the point that we are not behind on any high life safety places.
On any what?
So, any high life safety, like high schools, or school system, hospitals, rest homes, anything like that. We are current with all high life safety. It would be the mom and pop type stores that we might be behind. Now, and a lot of that is due to growth, just the sheer growth that we've had. That's the major reason that we're behind. And then the second reason is due to re-inspections. I mean, if you happen to go back, doing re-inspections, say if we're doing 100 inspections this month, there's a possibility we're going to go back and do 70 re-inspections. So if I can eliminate those 70, we'll quickly get back to where we need to be. And the problem is we had looked at doing company inspections as part of this, but my fear with that is we take a company and go there, you're in there for 30 to 45 minutes, and the bell hits, now we're having to leave in the middle of an inspection and go over here. So we actually have had a part-time person. He's been with us now for about 3 or 4 months, and we tried that situation, and that's helped and helped us get caught up. But this really the growth, and we're not the only ones. We are not the only ones. This is not something that's just for New Bern. This is pretty much happening across the thing. It's just a growth. We're having commercial growth, and we have not hired anybody in that division since 2002 or so.
Chief Boyd, how many inspections a year would you say we do?
2,000 plus.
2,000 plus inspections in 365 days or
Well,
less?
20 days a month.
How many re-inspections do you do?
I'd say about 70% of our, we have to go back.
So I'm getting, the concern is out there that we're kind of asleep at the wheel here, that we're 18 months behind. I'm just trying to make sure that we, in this budget and for the ensuing year, that we can assure the public that we're on top of our fire suppression and abatement of conditions that might be a safety hazard. And so we're going to do it with what Alderman Astor said and what you said. We're going to get caught up on those 18 months.
We're working on it now, sir. And
so when do you think we'll be? What is
I think there again, our main priority is high life safety issues. There again, it's the rest homes, the hospitals, and things like that. We're current with that. We are not behind. And we have done other things. If you currently in the historic area, it was larger because when bed and breakfasts come about, they're required to be done annually. We changed that a little bit, so it helped out with that. And there's other things that we've done too to reduce the burden onto the guys. But a lot of it's just the growth that we're having. And I think if you put with the re-inspections burden taken off of them, and putting a new fire inspector in place, then within probably 6 months to a year, we should be back current.
Alderman Odom, Jim.
Yes, sir. Chief, quick question. Who dictates or mandates how often or the frequency of the inspections?
That's done through the code.
The state code?
That's correct. Well, actually, national code.
Okay. Thank you.
Which is state adopted.
The part-time guy you have now, what would it take to bring him up to full-time?
He actually worked for another fire department. He just works with his days off with us.
Okay. What about the first fire district? Are you still having to do that?
Yeah, we changed. That's what I'm talking about. We changed. It used to be larger because it was increased during when you were there because the bed and breakfast came on scenes, and we increased it to encompass the bed and breakfast. Well, now the bed and breakfasts are a part of the code where we're required to go in there annually anyway. And what was happening is we'd have a church inside of that district we were having to do annually, go a block down the road, and the same church was only having to be done every 3 years. Mm-hmm. So we went back to the primary fire district that we originally had it, which carries the downtown area.
And how often do you inspect that?
They're annually.
So every business in the first fire district is inspected annually.
That's correct.
Basically everything on Middle Street, Craven Street, and many of the other downtown streets are you have to go in there annually.
So Chief, with the new process that you plan on implementing and the 6 firefighters that we've approved in the budget and the fire inspector that was already in the budget that we didn't pull out, you think that's going to be suffice to get you where you need to be so that there's not this backlash that we're behind on the mom and pops? You will
Yes,
be
ma'am.
good?
I think, like I say, it's a little bit out of proportion. I don't think
Right.
it's as bad as what
And we
it
appreciate all
sounds.
the hard work that you guys are doing. We want to make sure as a board that we're setting you up properly so that you can move forward and be, at a place that you feel your firefighter should be and your inspector should be.
Yes, ma'am.
And the only other question, Mr. Stevens, as far as the present budget, there'll be no tax increase.
No tax increase, sir. The only major increase that we have would be the sanitation rate increase.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion, please, that we adopt the ordinance for the fiscal year 2018-19 budget?
Yes, sir.
I'll second that.
Motion by Alderman Astor, seconded by Alderman Bingle. Is there further discussion?
Mayor, I'll just make a couple comments.
Yes, sir. Go right ahead, sir.
I appreciate the time, energy, and effort that both staff and this board put into our deliberation over the budget. We went around the circle and bend several times to come back to essentially just a couple of changes. I think there was a lot of thoughts and ideas of what could be. Some things that I'm not in favor of is the trash fee increase. It's not necessarily classified as a tax increase, but it is, because if you are a citizen of New Bern and you own property and you pay ad valorem tax and you are also a customer of the trash pickup, then you are going to be paying more this coming year. I did support and still support the increase of the firemen. I think it's needed in that particular area. Have some questions about some things, but I think a good enough case was made that with the ensuing construction of Highway 70 and the bypass, that's something we need to address. There was some funding mechanisms that would have funded those positions. But in essence, I'm not a fan of taking our fund balance. Mr. Sabatelli is going to be estimated to be what after this project that's in the budget of the repaving?
Around 30%, sir.
So we're dropping it 5 to 7%, depending on how this year finishes out. So that was my comment, sir.
Okay, any other comments?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
my only comment would be that, like Alderman Odom said, I appreciate all the hard work that the department heads and everybody put together and the hard work that we did. My only issue would be I wouldn't be able to vote yes for this budget because it's not a true reflection of what the budget will be, because we haven't did our review for the city manager or move forward with the director of finance. So it's not a true reflection of what the ultimate budget would be, because if they are approved for raises or anything like that, was not worked in what is already in the budget. So I would have to vote no.
Okay. I would say this is my 13th or 14th budget, and there's been some a whole lot more difficult. There's been some easier. I think the difficulty of this one is that I've watched the staff be 530 or so and down to 459, and we're hitting back up, but our population has actually dropped off a little bit. And of course, statistics is what it is, and numbers are what they are. I think the city is in for a lot of positive growth. I don't like growing staff. Staff is the most expensive part of a budget, but at the same time, I think that we have some real issues with James City, and I'm very concerned for the next 5 years or so as to the public safety portion of providing fire service in the James City area. My main concern in this budget this year is not the budget itself. I don't think any service that the city's doing should be supplemented by taxpayers, and that's what the present trash collection is. We're to the tune of $160,000 in the red doing that, and I don't see a problem with whatever that equitable fee structure should be being administered. My only concern in this budget is having gone through some furlough days, Alderman Bingle, as you recall. It's very embarrassing for a city to get in that position, but I think this budget I think we have sufficient days on hands in our enterprise funds. I'm not a riverboat gambler at 30%. I think if we're at a 50% or better, if I'm out, somebody needs to read a couple of Bible passages about burying your money and not getting proper leverage of it. I think the city fiscally is safe in this budget. I think that we have heard concerns and we have addressed those in our city. Again, I just stress that for the next couple of years, this budget is going to kind of really put us in, unless we get a really lot of growth, sales tax revenues, et cetera, or home starts. This time next year, it's going to be really hard without some really increases in fees or taxes to add another 6 or 10 employees. So I'm overall satisfied with the budget myself. Anybody else?
I'm absolutely satisfied with the budget, especially since we removed the quartile for the employees, and the city manager is going to work with us on how to distribute those funds. And of course, I fought hard for the 6 firemen and at the Thurman Road Fire Station, and I really do appreciate the support from everybody on that. The residents out there, it was a topic. Actually, it was this morning at the Coffee with a Cop. That was the biggest discussion that was that they had for me was, are we going to get the 6 firemen? So I appreciate everybody's support on that.
Since you brought that up about removing the quartile, did we ever have a solidified decision that there was going to be, okay, so, I mean, because do we need a resolution on that, or what we need to do on where it's 1% across the board and then the remainder, the department heads have a decision, because that's what we fought for. I know I did.
That's what we decided.
Right.
I'm not.
I mean, do we need to vote on that? Do I need to make a motion to say, hey, I make a motion that the employees are paid guaranteed 1% every employee, and then whatever's left over, the departments have the ability to give them a merit raise?
Well, we have a motion and a second on the floor at the present time. That might, I don't know if that's something we can discuss under new business, or if it needs to be.
I thought that was in there.
I mean,
I thought we discussed that at the last. And I
I don't
thought that was
remember the
part of
1% across the board. I remember and I may be wrong, but I do remember
because we couldn't.
There was, and we've gone back. There was a question that was raised earlier. We went back and looked. I had Brenda go back and look, and there was no concrete decision made. There was lots of discussion surrounding about how we were going to handle pay and those quartiles and everything else, which still could happen. I mean, we can do that. You can approve the budget as it is tonight, which basically you're approving the amounts for the line items in the department. How we change or allocate the performance appraisal systems, we can definitely do that, but based on the way the proposed performance system will continue is through the quartile systems, because we haven't received direction otherwise.
That's what I'm saying. And we said, because you and Chrissy were going to get back to us throughout the year, that we should do it. Well, we discussed that it should be, well, I made the conversation, and other individuals agreed, I'm not sure how many people, that it should be 1% like a COLA across the board, and then the remainder is merit, and allow the department heads to make that decision until you and Chrissy can come back further in the year with how we need to go about, because none of us really agreed with the quartile system. So, I just need to know what I need to do as an alderman so we can get that solidified, down, packed on that's what's going to happen. Because, I mean, all of the employees deserve a raise.
Mark, did I understand? Did you say we were keeping the quartile system, or are you eliminating it?
Currently, we will continue to work through the quartile system because there was no clear direction given from the board. I did mention that Chrissy and I were looking at the performance.
No, I thought we had made
We
the
reviewed
decision.
the video, and the video did not.
I thought
give
Jeff
us
made
clear
the
direction.
Jeff, didn't you make the motion that they used?
If I would have, it would have had a 1% COLA.
I understand, clearly that, but
Well, we was under the impression, where did the 1.8% for employees come in at?
1.8% is the average across the board approximately of what you would see for all employees across the board. Some will receive 1, some will receive 2.5, depending on where they fall in the quartile system.
Could we, with a motion second on the floor, vote on the budget at this time and then discuss the quartile as soon as we get through with this, if this passes or fails?
Well, how you gonna vote on a budget when we're not
Because
even
this
sure
is-
how
this-
we wanna allocate the money?
These figures are associated with the departments themselves. It's not specific to an employee or anything. It's just round figures for each department that we're voting on. Yes, can you just say?
I think Alderman Kinsey was waiting.
Okay, Alderman Kinsey.
Yes, I echo off of Alderman Odom comments based on the trash pickup. It's a lot of trash that is out through the city that they put flags down, some we don't pick up anymore. And I just don't understand that part there. Before we picked up a lot of different items of trash, but now we no longer do that. And I echo off of Alderman Lady Harris also. I don't think that, the budget is ready to be approved. We have a new utility guy that just come in, and I think that he should have some input, even though he's brand new, but we still could listen to what he had to share. I feel that with the 6 new firemen added to the list, I feel very strong about that now, that we're giving people more security and they're feeling more safe, and we're able to do our job. I would like to see that the stormwater guys get more help to do the ditches, especially when it rains like the way we've been having, because you have trash that accumulates and comes into a place, and when you only have 2 or 3 guys out trying to do a big city, I mean, it's not a lot of coverage that they can really do, because yourself, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Odom and I, we have participated in that many, many times, and we still do. And I just think that I'm not in favor of the budget tonight myself, personally.
Okay, Alderman Best.
Where are you? That's okay, I'll wait.
Well, go ahead, Alderman Best.
I guess this is my fifth budget that I've worked on. And, the reason we had the sessions we did was to talk about all of this. Some of the things we got, some of the things we didn't get. We discussed it, we worked it out. This is not a perfect budget. None of us will ever have a budget in front of us that we 100% like. So, you can vote no because there's one thing wrong in it. I understand that. You have to make your statement, but we really put this city in a bind by voting no on a budget tonight, because then they're going to go back to the drawing board. We've got till the 26th, and I've been part of a meeting where we did not vote on the budget till the very last minute. It was very difficult. It was when we had no money. I am glad to spend the money we have on infrastructure. So I'm glad that we're paving roads and improving things. And if that means having a 30% fund balance, then that's a good thing, because we need to improve our roads. We need to improve our infrastructure. I'm glad to hire the 6 firemen to protect our citizens in that part of the city. We have other responsibilities in other parts of our city that I hope in this next year we can accomplish and do. But for the most part, there's parts of it I don't particularly care for, but overall, the majority spoke. As we went through it, the majority voted for or against, and that's how we got this budget. So I will be voting yes for the budget.
We'll know for next time when we do budgets that we need to do workshops
Starting
starting in February. I mean, it doesn't matter to me how many budgets someone's been through. A budget's going to be different, and there's going to be a different set of eyes on it. So it's not, my intent to hinder the city from moving the budget across. But as an alderman that sits in this ward and represent a part of the city and the city as a whole, I don't agree with it. And I've sat in the work sessions and tried to fight for certain things. 1.8% increase to the employees. I just think that's a slap in the face. I mean, so.
Well, what the city manager is saying is that we approved the budget, we got that pot of money,
Well,
It's
I
dedicated
think
for
the amount
employees.
that was dedicated should have been more than that.
Okay.
Alderman Best.
Well, I'm overall in favor of the budget, but there's a couple things that I really didn't agree with. Really wasn't for any rate increases, especially for the sanitation rate going from 11.75 to 14.75. But I initially I felt that we could have received the revenues from increasing the motor vehicle, which was just $5 or $10, as opposed to the additional money that our customers will be paying monthly for the sanitation rates. But again, we all have our own opinions about things, and we all voiced our opinion, but I'm in favor overall for the budget.
Any other comments at this time? Seeing none, we do have a motion by Alderman Astor, seconded by Alderman Bingle, and we're going to have roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom?
No.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
No.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris?
No.
Alderman Bingle?
Yes.
And what is your total?
It carries 4-3.
Okay, this time we're going to go, now, did you want to make any comments about the quartile at this time? Okay. We're going to go to item number 18,
Well,
appoint.
you know, let me back
Go ahead.
up, because I think we should get a policy on that and find out how the city manager is going to handle it, because I'm totally against the quartile system.
Well, then we need to figure that out, because we've had the discussion over 3 or 4 meetings.
Yeah,
and
well,
it's getting repetitive by now on how some of us feel about what we need to do for the employees. So if we need to do a motion or a resolution, then we need to figure out how to do that.
Well, I think we should just ask the city manager to develop his plan and bring it back to us.
That's what he said, and he said he's gonna get with Chrissy, and it would be next year.
Well, no, he's going to have to do it quick, because it's time.
You think he's gonna have a plan by July 1st to
Well,
be
if we
able
are
to
going to give them
distribute?
across, again, I was under the understanding, I missed something somewhere, but I was under the understanding that all the employees would get 1%. They were meant, because I think you built in about, didn't you say it was 0.8% that was left or something like that? And that you were going to take that 0.8% and divide that with merit raises based on what was added to the budget?
So the difficulty is, let's say I have the HR department. When we say 1.8%, that's across the board, 470 employees, however many we've got approved in this budget as a total. When I say that, let's take HR as an example. If I have a lot of tenured people in there that were scheduled to get 1% increases, if they've got 5 employees, then I don't have the extra 0.8% to give, because it's based on the budget number of where the people fell within the quartile system. You see what I'm saying? You see what I'm getting at? Some departments, let's say if I take Jordan's water and sewer department, let's take the sewer department. If he's got 75 or 80% of his staff out of 60 employees that he has there that are 5 years or less, then the majority of them are going to be in the 2.5% range versus the 1% range. So it may be easier to say in that department you've got that opportunity.
Do you have enough money in the budget where we can give everybody a 1% raise? That's my first question.
Yes,
Sure.
I think so.
So that's step one. You do have enough money?
Yes.
You know for sure. Okay, so that's in there.
That would-
In the
because-
adopted budget right now, there's enough for all of our employees to get a
There,
1% raise.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's-
So the thing we need to do now is give him the marching orders to take care of it.
That's what Alderman Astor was stating, and we need to know the procedure. If it needs to be a motion, a resolution, what do we need to do so that we all need to vote and agree, because I feel it should be 1% across the board, and whatever is left over for each department is a merit raise to whoever went above and beyond exceptional
The issue that I have
service.
is and I'm not saying that I will be required to. What I'm saying is that there may be the possibility then, at that point, I would need to come back with a budget amendment for specific departments regarding performance appraisals.
That's the reason why I was saying prior to this, we needed to make that happen, because we needed to find the money in the budget. Just wanted to point that
Well,
out.
you wouldn't be able to know the answer to that question until after the evaluations of the employees anyway.
That is
Not-
correct.
not how? If you already just said based on the other ones you're gonna give, the percentage, you
Well,
already
no,
know.
if everybody gets a 1%, as you suggest, and then they do the evaluations, and then you have that employee that goes above and beyond, what the city manager's saying is, we really won't know what the exact figure would be
But
until after all those
if we
employees.
can do a hypothetical based on the average, we could prepare for the money in the budget, because now if he has to come to an amendment, you still gotta find the money.
Wow.
At least I want to direct them to at least go ahead with, as of July 1, the new budget, to give our employees a raise. Because I thought that's what we were doing. All right.
I don't recall, and maybe if you remember anything in the minutes, I don't know, but I don't recall anything about giving everybody across the board living raise. I recall more of doing away with the quartile system, which would eliminate the senior employees getting only a 1% raise.
This is the difficulty that we ran into last time. There was lots of discussion, and basically when we reviewed the minutes, there was no final decision. So we as staff, when we don't have a definite direction in which to move, we continue on with the way we're continuing to operate until we get further direction to do so.
Okay,
So that's the problem.
Alderman Odom.
Mr. Manager, correct me if I'm wrong, but I see two options at this point. One option is move forward with the system that's in place right now. That's the way the budget was created. That's the way the system has been for several years. That would allow you this fiscal year to work on a plan to update it and come back with something different. That's option number one. Option number two is give everybody, figure out whatever your number is in there for merit increases, figure out how many employees you got, figure out what that percentage is, and give everybody a flat percent. I think what you're trying to say is when you start getting into this mix of giving everybody 1%, then you got to look at the pool of money that's left. Then you got to do performance evaluations. Then you're going to have to figure out how many of them come back excels, how many come back below expectations. Then you got to figure out how much money you need. Then you're going to possibly have to come back to the board and say, there's not enough there. What you do know is what's in the budget right now, which was based off the quartile system, or you could simply give everybody a flat percent across the board.
What would that be, JR? Take the money that we have budgeted.
Alderman Astor, it would be approximately 1.8%. That was the number the estimated number we came up with.
So we could give everybody a 1.8% across the board living raise this year, right? And that would do away with any merit or increases based on their evaluations, correct?
That essentially is what would happen, yes, sir.
And then revise the system for next year.
And Alderman Astor, I will say just continue or echo what the city manager was saying earlier. I'll use my warehouse division as an example. I've only got 3 employees in there, and a couple of them are longer tenured. So in order to make sure that we have enough money to cover a 1.8% across the board for those folks, we will have to do a budget amendment that we would have to bring back before you all for approval to reclassify those funds from somewhere else within the budget. Also, keep in mind, it's 1.8% across the board, which includes all utility funds. So there's a possibility that there could be additional money needed in the general fund that we would have to find sources for, given the fact that the general fund may have a smaller percentage increase overall than the utility funds. Like I said, the 1.8 is citywide, all 450 some employees, not necessarily just each individual fund. So there's a lot of, I just want to iterate that there's a lot of moving parts associated with any change that you do regarding salary at this point. We can make anything happen that you want, but there's a lot of moving parts associated with it right now.
I like the second idea. Across the board. I mean, we discussed it, so I mean, I've discussed it, we've discussed it, so I mean, I think it should be across the board. I mean,
Would you be more comfortable if it was across the board at 1.5% with the money that's available?
Sir, to be honest with you, the percentage isn't really what concerns me. It's just making sure that I can get all the numbers where they need to be. It's just going to take some work.
Okay, can you come back to us at our next meeting in June, which we could still adopt it and be able to have it in place for July 1? Because we've adopted the budget. I mean, you're still working within the budget. It's just how you're allocating it.
Yeah. I mean,
Only got $700 raise.
we have a budget technically approved. I think, which still needs direction on how the board wants to do it. We can make anything happen. We can come back with an amendment to make it, if y'all want 1.8% across the board, if you want 1.8% to be the average based on it, it's still going to be based on performance appraisals. And those performance appraisals we can't necessarily determine what the outcome of that's going to be. Unless you say, we want every single employee to have 1.8%.
That's what I think that's what I'm saying for this year, until we can have a discussion.
But I need the board to say that.
Okay, well, do I need to make a motion? What do we need to do? Because I'm giving you my direction. Do we need to make a motion?
You can make a motion.
Okay, well, I make a motion that,
You know what? I'm just worried he's not gonna have enough money. I don't know.
Okay.
I'm being cautious right now.
I mean, $500 someone's getting. Okay, so.
Well, why don't we,
I-
when's our next meeting?
Alderman Odom?
Mr. Sabatelli, what is that, the 1.8%, what is that dollar amount?
As I recall, overall, it was a little over $400,000.
How many employees do we have approved in this budget?
Around 450 something.
No, it's more.
I'm sorry, I apologize. I don't know off the top of my head.
Option 3 would be take that dollar amount that you know you've got in there, divide it by every employee gets the same dollar amount,
What's that dollar amount since you did the numbers?
$800 roughly.
I take that.
I can do with that.
Yeah, because right now, if you did it based on the salary, some people are getting 500, some are getting 400, so let's give them a dollar amount.
So you made the motion, I second.
Okay. I make a motion for Alderman Odom's suggestion of taking the amount that we have and dividing it by how many employees we have and giving them that flat rate.
I'm voting for it.
And, do you second that?
I second
Okay.
that.
So we're giving everybody a $800 raise.
For right now, until we work better as a board to figure out how we're gonna pay our employees.
Yeah, motion by Alderman Harris, seconded by Alderman Kinsey. Is there further discussion?
I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So we've given all the employees these raises, and you're talking about your money is limited. So what happens with some of those employees? Is that pulled out another pot when some of these employees get their longevity raise this year? How is that going to be treated?
That's different.
The longevity raises would continue to be the same as
So it's not going to affect what the money's right?
No,
Okay.
no,
All right.
Just to be clear, my suggestion was not a raise, it was a bonus, so one time, just to be clear. Because I know you're going crazy over your salary ranges and everything else, it was a one-time bonus is what my suggestion was.
Right, they do.
In lieu of a raise.
Correct.
Madam Clerk, would you read the motion back over?
Well, I guess there's clarification needed from Harris. Do you want it to be a one-time bonus or a raise?
Well, I guess a raise, right?
I meant a bonus when I said it, because that's the simple math, the way to do this. If you do a raise, then you're going to take somebody that's making $15,000 and you're going to give them a raise of $800, and somebody making $100,000, you're going to give them a raise of $800.
Okay, so a bonus. So that means we're not giving raises this year, we're just gonna give a one-time bonus.
Okay, the motion is to take the amount that's in the budget, divide it by the number of employees, and give the employees the same amount in the form of a bonus, one-time bonus.
Okay, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman. Did you have questions?
Now think about this.
With Alderman Bingham?
It's not what I set out to do. I set out to give our employees a raise that needed a raise, so I.
Well, hey, throw in the raise. I mean,
I understand that.
specifically said in my workshop.
Well, there's a big difference between a raise and a bonus.
Right, there is. I mean,
A raise means every paycheck you're getting a little bit of something. So your paycheck to
But
paycheck,
then you
it's
have
going a little
taxes
bit
that
more.
come out, so really they're
Absolutely,
not.
but you're gonna have taxes come out of a bonus too, for a law. You gotta have taxes taken out.
We're,
And
I would rather.
Well, I tell you, I know that we, necessarily don't want to be here all night, but I'm on Facebook on our thing, and someone made a great statement that said if we give them all 1% for their merit raises, and then, or for across the board, and then the remainder, give the employees a choice of time off or take the money, because some of the lower paid employees may want the money, or the, you know, or the other ones may not because of taxes. I mean, that's a great,
Well, I'm sure you can ask our HR director, but there's some laws required as far as money and time off, aren't there? Isn't it difficult sometimes to do that?
I started to ask for a roll call, and I think we still have active debate on this. While we're having it, and so I can jut in, I personally would like to have like a special meeting 2 hours prior to the next meeting, or
I agree.
midway, and
Let's
give
think about
staff
this.
time to work through this. I'm not gonna vote for some kangaroo court motion here that's not well thought out. I'm not going to, but y'all can. But keep
I'm not
talking.
good about it. The more I think about it, you know, well, I think our employees are looking for a raise, and many of them do live paycheck to paycheck, and that's just the way it is. And so if they know they're getting an extra $50 a paycheck or something, that may be more helpful to them than a one-time $800, you know, in their check.
Why do we wait until this time to have these deep-rooted discussions? I mean, we know that the employees are at the top of the list, and they're the foundation of the city. We should have these deep-rooted discussions. They need a raise. And $500 and the taxes coming out, that's a slap in the face. So we should have had a budget where they're getting more than just the average of 1.8%. I've vocalized that over a course of all these meetings. So we can meet 4 hours before, 20 days before. At the end of the day, I'm still in stead foot in where I'm at, that they need raises, and it needs to be more than what we're allocating. So you guys already passed the budget, so really it's whatever they see fit to do. All I'm saying is moving forward, we need to do better as a city in how we pay our employees. I mean, that was your complaint,
It was, but we did vote, the budget did have raises in it. So we did vote for a budget that had
But
additional.
the raises are based on someone getting a raise if they go above and beyond. And as someone that worked in corporate America, I come to work every single day, and I felt I went above and beyond. But if I wasn't exceptional, I don't deserve a raise. That's not right, because taxes, everything goes up. We're living in a society where people are struggling just to pay their utility bills,
Yeah, but
or
many
the
people-
$5 tax on their vehicle.
Many
Mayor, I
people
call
would
for
argue
question.
with you
Motion's
that
on
if
the
you're
floor.
getting paid,
Okay,
if
we
you're
have
getting
a
paid
call
your
for the
salary.
motion. Is there a second to a call for the motion, or do you want to continue to discuss this? Do we have a second to the call?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to call the question. All in favor of the motion to call the question, raise your right hand. 2 and 4. Ooh, we got 4 to call for the question.
Call for the question. It's not voting on the
No,
question.
this is to call for the question, so we have been, our debate has stopped because of the majority want to call for the question.
Oh, what's the question?
Mr. Davis, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So at this time, we will have to go with the original vote without any further discussion.
And this is for the bonus, correct?
Yes.
The one-time bonus.
Well, let's let the Madam Clerk read it out again,
We didn't vote on it.
what we're fixing to vote on.
Okay, the motion is to take the amount that is in the budget, divide it by the number of employees, and give each employee the same amount as a one-time bonus.
Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
No.
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris? Alderman Astor?
No.
Mayor Outlaw?
No.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
No. Mayor, I'd like to make a substitute motion that we move forward with the raises as implemented in the budget based off of the system that was created at the time.
Is there a second to that motion?
Are we allowed to have comments?
No, because there's no.
Oh, there's no second, so the best motion and approval would be to have a good 2-hour, 3-hour workshop after the staff's had time to seemingly hear the board's concerns, and at that time prior to the meeting, you know, what we have to approve by July 1st is a budget. We can, for the next 365 days, we can approve what we're talking about, but I'm sure that as with most budgets and most history of our city, policy has been pretty much adopted prior to July 1st pertaining to what we're talking about.
Well, you just made a comment. Am I allowed to make a comment?
Oh, yes, ma'am.
Okay,
We're in the
so,
comment stage. Yeah.
Right here, someone else on Facebook made a great suggestion. Why don't we do a survey monkey and send out to all the employees whether they would want a bonus or a raise, and we can get that back in within a couple of days, and then we have our next meeting, and based on what the employees want, we can move forward, because they're the ones that are getting the raise or not getting the raise. Let's help them be active in the discussion.
Alderman Kinsey?
I think what Alderman Odom suggests is just give them the raise until the manager.
You didn't second his motion. He made a motion. Why did you second it? You're now recommending that. You should have seconded it.
I'm just against the
He
quartile.
died, so if he wants to remake a motion, you want to second it, we can do that. Mr. Odom, I think you have an encouraged individual alderman that might second your motion.
Sure, so moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, do you understand the motion?
I do.
Okay. Now,
And would you read that motion?
Hold on, let me get back up. Did that
So the
clear?
full board knows what they're fixing to vote on.
January, so when it's time for our budget, we have.
Okay, to approve, I looked at a word, to approve a raise or an increase based on the amount that was in the budget, based off the system created at that time.
Correct.
That's currently in
So
place.
the quartile system.
Quartiles, correct.
Is there discussion about that motion?
I like that.
Sir? Go ahead, you got something to say?
It gives the manager and the finance director time to look at everything, so giving them the bonus will be the way to go until the next time around. That's my.
Alderman Odom, is
Well,
that
that's
your
not-
take of your motion?
No, sir.
That's nothing like what the motion was.
That's what my comment was going to be.
Well, that's not what your second was for. Alderman Odom, would you explain your motion?
I understand what he just said.
Okay.
But I was just telling you what I was thinking.
Well, I'm strongly against the quartile system. I think that we're penalizing our employees that have been working here for 20 years. And I'm against it. I'll vote no for this in hopes that the city manager could come up with another game plan between now and the implementation of the budget. But I cannot vote for the quartile system. I've just heard too many employees complain that they're the ones that get called out in the middle of the night. The senior employees are the ones that the staff depends on, and they're the ones that get the 1% raises. The ones that's been here for 2 years get the 2.5% raises. It's not fair. Yeah, I'll vote no against it.
Okay, I think any further discussion on the motion? If not, let's have a roll call starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Currently, I am confused right now. What was the last?
We're not changing anything. It's been
Yeah.
just the
It's
same
gonna stay
raise and
quartiles.
evaluation, the
We're
same
just
using
leaving
the
it the way it
quartile
was.
system.
Yeah, that was the motion.
Just like it's been for years.
Okay, so with that said, then that means that the employees will get a 1.8%
No.
across the board?
No.
Okay.
It's based on their evaluation, whatever.
Whether they were exceptional.
And it's based on the number of years of service.
I don't remember.
Well, I thought,
It was 5 or 6 years ago, I'm thinking that we did quartile because there was an inequity at that time.
Well,
But that has been solved, and now
That's right.
It's just not right now.
I would rather for them to have the pot of money and give it to the department heads and let the department heads
Well,
divvy it out
that
to.
didn't pass, so we gotta go ahead and vote on this one right
Well-
so I thought we were saying divide the money that's currently there, divide it against among the
That
employees.
didn't pass.
Didn't pass.
I thought it was 4-3. It was 4 against.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Wow.
Madam Clerk, would you read this again?
Please.
So that we all know what we're
Jeez.
doing?
It is basically keeping the quartile system, using the money that is in the budget. Correct?
Okay, Alderman Odom? This is a vote. Roll call.
He already said
I
yes.
voted yes.
I'm sorry, sir. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, we are with Alderman Best.
So no raises is to be given until we have further discussion on this, correct?
Which needs to happen soon.
Okay, before the budget is approved, before it's implemented July 1.
I don't think we said that. They're gonna get the raises based on the courthouse system, that's what we voting on.
But when do you start your evaluations, Mr. City Manager?
Their HR has already sent out the information to the department heads. They're currently in the process. I don't know where each department head is in their process, but it's in process now. But the due date, July 15th, is that correct? 20th, I'm sorry, because we had budgeted and planned for this implementation for our first pay period in August. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, technically, we do have some time. I know there's a motion on the table, but that should answer your question.
How much, if the board is concerned about making a policy decision tonight, that might be the wrong one, could you not, with sufficient time, giving staff sufficient time, go back even though it was July 20th and retroactively bring it to July 1st? Could you do that? Is that hard to do?
It's been planned for August all along.
Sir?
It was planned for August all along,
We've
correct?
we've planned for August all along.
I'm not sure of the rush then, but anyway, we do have a motion, and we are at Alderman Best for a vote.
No.
Alderman Kinsey,
No.
Mayor Outlaw,
No.
Alderman Astor.
No.
Alderman Harris,
Nope.
Alderman Beagle.
No.
With that said,
What is the pleasure of the board at this
I
time?
think we should have a work session to discuss
Yes,
that,
sir. I make a motion that we schedule a work session, talk about this. I would like to bring it back at our June 26th meeting, if that can be done. I would, sooner rather than later. Don't kick the can down the road anymore.
If the implementation is August, what type of time does the staff need to adequately, and in saying that, if you have any other expressions or concerns you need to give them to staff, how much time do you need to properly vet this situation?
With regards
Or do
to
you feel
how
like
we
you have
handle
enough
the
direction to?
how we handle the performance of evaluation system, is that what you're
Well,
asking me?
obviously, the board, in my opinion, the majority are not in favor of the courthouse system.
Do you mind if I
Yes, sir.
provide a suggestion here? Maybe we can kind of bring this in. So what I would say, Mayor, is allow myself and Chrissy some opportunity to discuss this and how quickly we can turn around. I will send that to you via an email when we could potentially expect something. It's August, first pay period in August by the time we get this anyways, and then we can report back based on how we want to handle a performance evaluation system and report that back to the board. The money is in the budget. If it takes us a little bit longer, we can retro that back to that date so the employees aren't going to miss out on their money. It's not like that. Even if it took us to September, yes, it may take them a month longer before they see that increase, but we can retro back that money to make it happen. And that way we can get a performance evaluation system in place that is positive and well received by the employees.
Can you repeat that?
Essentially, if you will, allow Chrissy and I to confer with one another. We will report back in an email to the board on when we could expect to have something to the board with regards to a performance evaluation system that is both positive for the employee and also for the board. Regardless of whether it takes us August 1st or September the 1st or even October the 1st to make a final decision on this appraisal, the employees will get their money because we have budgeted for it from August 1 throughout the rest of the remainder of the year. And then at that point, we can provide a suggestion. If the board wants to add anything to it, we can do it a budget amendment, whatever that they want to do. But it seems to me there's a lot of moving parts, and it's based on a performance evaluation system, in my opinion, on whether the employee even deserves to get it. And so if that's what the board wishes to do, then I'm happy to do that.
Does the board want to have a workshop based on on what the manager
I
said?
think give him time to work it out and send it to us, and then we'll see.
Okay,
if
so we
workshop.
can decide maybe next meeting if we want a workshop.
I agree.
So,
Okay. Anything else on this item? This,
Alderman Bingle did make a motion to have a workshop.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I thought, well, okay.
You want to wait until you get his recommendations first?
That's fine, that's fine. Well, I mean, we're gonna have to have a workshop. I didn't say when, he said afterwards, so that's fine.
well,
I can withdraw that, and as long as he's got direction, he's gonna come back to us. Just make sure the record reflects we did talk about this,
yes.
and that we're gonna come back to a workshop. That's all I wanna make sure we're.
Okay, let's go to appointments, Alderman Bingham.
No, I'm sorry.
we have to go
We have
back
to
to
go back.
11-12.
Okay,
to
I'm
11 and
sorry,
12.
what was it, 12 then? or-
11, number
11
11,
and 12.
number 12.
Okay, let's go to item number 11, Mr. Alderman Stevens. Mr. Stevens.
Thank you for that honor, sir. This is an item to consider adopting an ordinance amendment to the 2017 Roadway Improvements Project Fund. As you recall, we've had various discussions with regards to the Old Airport Road improvements as well as resurfacing Oaks Road. This ordinance amendment allocates those funds based on the budget that you just approved. Mr. Sabatelli has a memo in your packet. Happy to answer any questions you have.
Board have questions?
I do, Mayor. Mr. Sabatelli, are these projects being funded through loan proceeds or through fund balance?
Sir, these are funded through loan proceeds.
I thought, maybe I'm confused, I know it's late, but the street project that we were doing, that we were taking the fund balance from 35 to 30, these projects were not included in that?
No, sir, they were not. These were separate in addition to.
Okay.
And also, just for clarification, we have the debt service is budgeted in the FY19 budget for these projects.
It's a pleasure, board, on item number 11.
Make a motion that we adopt the ordinance amending the 2017 Roadway Improvement Project Fund.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Astor, seconded by Alderman Harris. Is there further discussion? Let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Bingle.
Alderman Bingle?
Yes?
Alderwoman Harris?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Motion carries. Item number 12, Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, members of the board. This is amendment adopting declaration of intent to reimburse the 2017 roadway improvements project that you just approved. This includes our declaration that we typically require of our LGC approvals anytime we go to get debt service for particular physical improvements throughout the city.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion that we adopt the amendment for the declaration of intent to reimburse the 2017 Roadway Improvement Project Fund.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Alderman Astor, seconded by Alderman Kinsey. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, let's have a roll call, starting with Alderman Odom.
Alderman Odom?
Yes.
Alderman Best?
Yes.
Alderman Kinsey?
Yes.
Mayor Outlaw?
Yes.
Alderman Astor?
Yes.
Alderwoman Harris?
Yes.
Alderman Bingle?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Item number 18, appointments. Alderman Bingham.
None.
Alderman Harris.
None.
Alderman Astor.
Yes, I'd like to appoint or reappoint Marshall Williams to the Community Development Advisory Committee.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. Any other appointments, sir?
No.
Alderman Kinsey.
Yes, sir. I'd like to reappoint William Guines to the CDAC board.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, same. Do you have any other tonight?
No, sir.
Alderman Best.
No, I do not, but I have contacted Mr. Dale Simmons, just waiting on the reply from him.
Okay. Alderman Odom.
None tonight, sir.
Okay, this time we have the attorney's report,
That's important, Mayor.
city manager's report.
Mayor, I have two items. Back on appointments, now that we have a Director of Public Utilities, Charlie Bouchard, typically it has been the process for the Utilities Director to serve on the Electricity's Board as one of our representatives. We do have a vacant space. We have two alternates typically, but Mr. Bouchard will probably be attending these on a regular basis, more so than Alderman Harris or myself. So I would ask the board consider Mr. Bouchard for his appointment as the city's commissioner on the North Carolina Eastern Municipal Power Agency.
Second.
Motion by Alderman Astor, seconded by Alderman Harris. Is there further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same.
Second thing that I have, Mayor, I have received a letter from Mr. Blaney, the executive director of the Housing Authority, with his request to be on the agenda for the 26th of June. They are interested in acquiring a parcel of land that we have at 703 Carolina Avenue. The offer amount that they have is for $200,000 with a $10,000 option. So at this point, I'm curious about the wishes of the board, when they would like to have that on the agenda and their consideration of such. Obviously, there's probably some discussion and public comment that would be warranted. So I'm curious what the board's wishes are.
I'd like, Mayor, if you don't mind, I've already went to Pembroke and had this discussion over numerous meetings, and they've made their feelings that they do not want us to sell the property to the Housing Authority. So being the alderman of that ward, I would like it to be not for sale, because there's possibility that we can do something with it in the future as a city. And I would like to respect the wishes of the individuals that live in that community.
Alderman Harris, I respectfully disagree. It's a vacant piece of land that's scored very well on the HUD financing. We all know about the deplorable conditions of the housing at Trent Court. They're in a bad position. We're in hurricane season now. If there was some flooding, I believe there will be FEMA trailers set up somewhere in the city for those residents. So by having them come make a presentation so we can hear what they have to offer is not committing us to anything, correct, Mr. Attorney? It would just be an opportunity for them to present their case, and I would like to personally hear it.
Well, if that's the decision of the board, I would like it to be on a time where it is the ability for the request of the petition of citizens. So I would ask that it be put on for July 10th so that citizens can come and express their feelings. And then my second thing would be is this presentation and conversation has been brought to the previous board, and the previous board members did not vote on it. So I don't know what the change would be now, because like I've spoken, you guys understand my feelings. It's not necessarily a good decision or a good deal, and there's other properties available within that criteria for the Housing Authority to do what they need to do.
Okay, I think Alderman Harris, your comments were not in the form of a motion because none was needed because you're against us meeting with the Housing Authority Board. Alderman Odom, you're seemingly sounding like a motion. So what did you want to do?
I don't know that we need a motion as much as we just need direction, correct?
What?
It needs to go, well, there needs to be a motion to put it on an agenda or not.
Okay.
And if so, what agenda?
I would not be for having them here. I would not be for the project at this point. I feel that I'd like to see they keep talking about it, they have other properties they're looking at. I mean, they've met, Alderman Astor's been in a meeting, Alderman Harris, myself. I don't know why they could, individually meet with us if they would like to do that. Maybe that would be better, not sure. But if not, then I agree with Alderman Harris, and they need to come on a night when we can have citizens' requests so that the citizens can speak to it.
Alderman Best?
In reference to the Housing Authority, have they looked at additional properties that's owned by the city over in the Dufferfield area?
Great.
Have they looked at any properties over in that area?
There's a scoring methodology to this 9% tax credit.
Well, isn't it for low-income housing, basically?
I've not heard their presentation, so I don't know. I would assume.
Well, I'm just looking at in his letter. I was reading his letter, and it was pertaining to the low income, so I was wondering, was that an option for the Housing Authority?
For those that have not been through a hurricane and had a lot of residents displaced, and unfortunately enough that those things were one more time upfitted. They're not going to be upfitted this time, so when you have a hurricane and you have 114 residents wanting to know where to go, get ready to rent some hotel rooms or something, because they're going to come see you.
Well, Mayor, my thing is when Mr. Blaney came to Pembroke and explained it, the individuals were going to be put over in Pembroke, and then they were going to have the right of first refusal to come back. And in that same meeting, he was saying mixed income housing like condos and houses and voucher systems. I don't agree on that. I mean, basically, like I've stated and it's been reported in the paper, that's simply gentrification of that neighborhood. And I cannot vote on that. There needs to be a better system to do that. So like I said, if the board wants to, I, as the alderman in representation of that ward, and I've spoke to the citizens, as everyone, we all give each other respect in that ward, they voted no, and he was there and voted no. So if you guys are gonna go against my wishes and the wishes of the individuals in Pembroke, then if it gets passed for 4 or whatever the 4 votes, then it needs to go on July so that every single individual that lives in Pembroke will be here and explain to you guys in your faces how they feel about this deal. Because you're going to tell these people, the individual in Trent Court, that they can come back to condos and mixed-use house. And the way that it's presented is not fair to either party.
I still didn't get an answer when I asked about city properties over in the Duffield area. Has that ever been an option? Has that been
I
discussed?
don't think it's, my understanding is there is possibly one other possible property that fits within cell towers, railroads, within close proximity of a grocery store, and the other grid items that have to be met to qualify. It's been real hard for them to be able to find suitable properties that are, meet freeboard standards and other things for construction. That's where we are.
I mean, my only concern is that's the housing authority and we're the board of aldermen. Although we want to work with every individual and make every decision possible in the positive, that's their responsibility for that. They see that, that there's this land, and to my knowledge, when they met with me before I was sworn in and they met with me after I was sworn in, they've already talked to the board. So all the previous individuals, and they stated that you guys did not agree to the deal because based on what it was. And I've had conversations with aldermen, and they said that it wasn't a good deal. So what's changed now?
Because the deal before was a land swap for the current Trent Court property, and the city of New Bern residents be responsible for tearing those down.
Yeah.
This is an outright purchase.
So you already know what's going to happen. So you've already had a conversation with them?
We've had meetings with them for 3 years now.
My point. So 3 years with no one agreed to this. Why now? And the citizens. So you're okay with a whole community saying no and voting yes to sell it so that they can put the individuals over here and then do whatever they want with this land, and these individuals in Trent Court don't get to go back to their previous home.
They do have the right of first refusal, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, and right of first refusal, when you hear about it, it's not going to be beneficial to them because the rates and rents is going to go up because the people in Trent Court are living on a voucher system.
I think I'm not the expert. That's the reason I would like them to come make their presentation personally.
Okay.
July 10th, though, I wouldn't agree to anything other than a meeting where the citizens can come.
I agree. I mean, I wouldn't mind hearing their presentation because it certainly has changed. It's certainly changed since the last time I had a meeting with them.
So
but
we're gonna end this.
Wait a minute, please. But I do want to make sure that we have the opportunity to listen to every single voice in the Pembroke community.
Trust me, after you vote, I'm going to be on the phone and we'll have everybody here on July 10th.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion that we ask the Housing Authority, Mr. Blaney, to come and do the presentation at our July 10th meeting.
Second.
Motion and second. Is there discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same?
No.
Mr. Davis, for procedural purposes, it would be no problem for the Board of Aldermen to open this up for public discussion. We don't really need a public hearing. We can just open it up.
Yes, sir.
And seemingly have a public hearing.
Yes, sir.
And allow citizen input.
Yes, sir.
And at such time, okay. So, let's see now. We got past city manager's report because you brought this up. So we're going to go to, do you have any more
No,
city
sir.
manager stuff?
I think that's plenty.
Let's go to the new business, starting with Alderman Odom.
Nothing tonight, sir.
Alderman Best.
Nothing.
Alderman Kinsey.
Not tonight, sir.
Alderman,
Just one little quick thing. Is there any way possible, I'm sure this would probably be Matt, or it may even be the city manager, but we need exit numbers on the signs that where you exit for the city of New Bern. It seems that one or two of them have numbers, exit number 42A, 42B, and then you go down the road and the next one has no number on it. It just makes it simple that when you're trying to give someone directions, if you tell them to get off at the exit number 42 or whatever.
You're talking about on Highway 70?
On Highway 70, yes. Would you just check on that for me, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
anything else?
No, not a thing.
Alderman Harris.
No, sir.
Alderman Bingle.
Yes, I have a couple of things. First of all, I always want to say welcome to Tamara Church and her son. I'm so glad that y'all are here. You come to every meeting. Again, it's good to see young people at our meeting. The next thing is that, it's kind of crazy, but what are we going to do about the alligator out in the water that I've gotten several calls? It was at Union Point. And I'm very nervous because we've got that little, walkway that walks right into the water. That alligator can come right up, and there's so many people walking dogs and children along there. It makes me a nervous wreck. So, is there anything we could do to protect her? Did you see that video of that alligator? I mean, I'm very nervous. Is there anything that we can do, or is there anything? Can we call wildlife, or what do we need to do?
I can tell you that
We're
there's,
afraid of
well,
them.
you can call wildlife. They may not do it. However, I will tell you that in Craven County, the North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission has allowed for municipalities to adopt a resolution allowing alligator hunting during the certain months of the year, but it has to be by the municipality to allow it to happen, and there are only certain ways in which you can do it. You can only bag one per year per individual and things like that. There's a very detailed process. Matter of fact, I saw a recent article on it. Might have been today. But I'm happy to have some information. I know there's a very.
Back to the next thing, because I'm just fearful.
I will send you an email that has that link, and I'm thinking that they have not received any applications by municipalities to do so in all of the different counties. And that includes, I think, Onslow and Craven and Carteret and Pamlico and stuff like that. But I'm happy to send you that link, and you can reach out if you wish, or if you'd like for me to do so, I'm happy to do it.
I would like to do that, because there's sightings all around here, and now that I see it so close to Union Point, it frightens me. And I'm worried that we're going to read a story where somebody's dog has been taken or something. Okay, and then the last thing I want to mention under new business is today I went over to RCS. They had their construction kickoff for their bee campaign, and that is, help me here, Mayor, I know it's engaged and energized. I can't remember with all the letters, and I apologize, it's been a long day, but they're doing great work over there. They are serving needs. They're going to expand to where right now they're serving 40 people meals. They'll be able to serve 100 people meals and really take care of the needs of those people that need housing and food and shelter and resources, such as helping to pay our utility bills. They provide that service. I think it's wonderful, but there's a building that sits there that was the original RCS building. It was on property that the city owned, and local builders got together and built the original RCS back in 1985, I believe it was, 84, 85, somewhere in there. And after their lease was up, they moved into their big building. It just became property of the city. So I would like to ask staff, if this board so chooses, to start the process to allow us to give that building to RCS. It's on their campus. They currently use it now. They lease it for $1 a year. They have a 1-year lease that's just renewable. They're doing great work, and this is just another asset that they could use to have. I don't see us, having another use except for what RCS has been using it for. So I'd like to maybe put it out there for the pleasure of this board to see if we can move forward. Now, it's a process. We'd have to put it out there. they'd have to come back with a resolution. I think it's a 30-day process. Is that correct, Mr.
Yes, ma'am.
Davis? So it would be August before we could complete all this, but I would like, if everybody's got a temperature for it to
If
move
you
forward.
want to put that in a form of a motion, I
Yes.
think it would show resolute on the part of the board that we want to help them.
I'm not a fan of motions under
Okay.
new business unless it's
Can we
something
pre-commit
that's
to
been
doing that?
pre-advertised. I said I would do it once and I've kept my promise. But what I'd like to do is, give direction
Okay.
for, if the board so chooses, to give direction to Mr. Stevens to come back at our next meeting with potentially a resolution or something for us to look at to start the process
Okay.
of giving this building, conveying this building to RCS.
Does the
So
board anybody have a problem with that? Okay, I'm not seeing any concerns, so it looks to me like.
Would that
we
be
can-
okay, Mr. Davis?
Yes, ma'am. We're just discussing, part of our problem with our new agenda deadlines is that it's very hard to get something on the next agenda because it gives us 2 business days to make it happen. We will certainly try to get on this agenda. If we miss it, it'll be on the July 10th agenda.
Okay, we'd just like to get that
Yes,
process rolling, because I know there's a 30-day window on that.
If you're done, I
Yeah.
did want to.
And I think that's it. Thank you.
I did want to ask, sorry for new business. Mr. Foster, do we have an update on Kidsville on when that's going to be reopening? Because a lot of my citizens, and I'm pretty sure the whole city, would like to get back to having fun at Kidsville.
Yes, ma'am. We're still waiting on the audit from the auditors that did the report several weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Once we get that, we'll be able to analyze that and then give a recommendation. So I actually reached out to them last week to find out what the status was, and they said it would be here anytime. So
And while you're here, I just wanted to give can you just tell us how you think Footloose on the news went for the first time? Was it a great turnout, and how do you think it will go moving forward?
we were quite pleased with the first turnout. We had approximately 400 people that showed up for our first event. It seemed like everyone had a really good time. The next one is this Friday night with the Soul Psychedelic Orchestra. I've heard a lot of great things about that band, so hope a lot of people come out and have a good time. We'll have food and beverage vendors out there, and so I encourage everyone to come out.
Thank you for all your hard work,
You're
because
rocking the night away. 'Cause
Miss Bangle was there and she was in awe on how awesome it was, and so I just want to go bing, point proving that it
Still
is.
not going to get the stage.
That is a great, and a lot of the citizens that were there, they were, really excited that it was free and that we offered this, and, a lot of people are going to come out, so I really appreciate all the hard work that you and the rest of your staff did to make it be so successful.
Thank you.
Okay, any more new business at this time? Do we need a closed session tonight?
Yes, sir. We need to discuss a personnel matter pursuant to 143, 1311A6.
And do we have a motion on that?
Second.
Make a motion to go into closed session.
Make a motion that we go into closed session.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same.